Chapter 1820. The two of them, and the dog continued venturing deeper into the wilderness. The wilderness was a place where all sorts of living beings gathered. Apart from the various ferocious beasts, there were also some strange and powerful races. The region was extremely chaotic, with all sorts of living beings fighting one another. Almost no human cultivators were willing to step foot into this place. Right now, the combination of Su Zimo, Duan Tianliang and Big Yellow was extremely unique and attracted the attention of many living beings. However, when Su Zimo absorbed and refined the forest previously, he caused quite a commotion, and many living beings witnessed it. Living beings with high cultivation and combat strength did not dare to provoke him recklessly and merely followed from afar. As Su Zimo ventured deeper, the strength of the ferocious beasts he encountered increased as well. Along the way, there were already many ferocious beasts gathered nearby. There were hundreds of them, and their numbers were increasing as they surrounded Su Zimo's group. Duan Tianliang and Big Yellow had witnessed Su Zimo's methods before. However, they still felt nervous and shivered upon experiencing such a situation. The ferocious beasts before them were not just now. There were many ferocious beasts here that even Duan Tianliang and Big Yellow had not seen before. In the skies ahead, a gigantic bird floated. It was scarlet and burned with flames. It had 9 heads and exuded a scorching aura. Even though they were 1,000 feet apart, Duan Tianliang and Big Yellow could still feel waves of heat surging towards them. The 9-headed bird glared at Su Zimo's group maliciously. In fact, its body was even dripping with boiling lava. It was extremely terrifying. On the other side, a gigantic ferocious beast stood proudly among the demon beasts. The ferocious beast had a human face and a horse's body. It seemed to be the legendary pure-blooded ferocious beast, Ing Zhao. Behind the three of them, an ear-piercing buzzing sound could be heard. Duan Tianliang turned back, and his heart skipped a beat. Not far behind the three of them, there was a huge wasp. It was several times bigger than him, and its wings were vibrating rapidly in the air, making a buzzing sound. There was a poisonous stinger protruding from the tail of this giant wasp. It looked like a long spear, glowing with a dark green light, and emitting a foul stench. It was obvious that it was highly toxic. The three beasts were all at the 5th level of the mystic origin stage. More and more ferocious beasts like this were gathering in the surroundings. Most of the ferocious beasts didn't have high cultivation realms. Most of them were rank 1 and rank 2 Xian demons, while some were rank 3 and rank 4. However, if these beasts were to attack together, even a 5th or 6th level mystic origin stage cultivator might not be able to withstand them. In an instant, the three of them would be torn to pieces. Let's do it here. Su Zimo looked around. If they continued to go deeper, it was very likely that they would encounter even more powerful creatures. However, this place was already far away from the major forces, so there shouldn't be anyone who would discover them. Screech! The 9-headed bird at the front reared its head and let out a long screech at the same time. It was extremely ear-piercing and almost pierced through metal and stone. The surrounding ferocious beasts roared one after another with ferocious gazes. Almost at the next moment, they were about to pounce forward. Duan Tianliang's face was pale as he took out a round black ball from his storage bag with a trembling hand. He was on the verge of tears. Big Yellow was so scared that his legs went limp, and he almost collapsed to the ground. Right then, Su Zimo stood up slowly and hovered in midair, emitting a shuddering aura. That aura was completely different from the creation Qinglian from before. Berserk, ferocious, scorching and noble. After this aura was revealed, the surrounding demons revealed a hint of confusion in their eyes. The 9-headed bird, Ing Zhao and the giant wasp were bewildered as well. Suddenly, Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly, and he suddenly opened his mouth. Roar! A roar that shook the world and intimidated all the demons spread in all directions. It was like the roar of a dragon and the cry of a phoenix. It contained a supreme will that could not be resisted at all. Against that roar, some of the demon beasts with weak bloodlines and low cultivation could not withstand the pressure and knelt on the ground one after another. That was the roar of a taboo dragon phoenix. Even the descent of a divine dragon was enough to frighten all the demon beasts before them. let alone a dragon phoenix. Although the nine-headed bird, Ing Zhao and the giant wasp were at level 5 Mystic Essence realm, and could maintain their composure, the aura that Su Zimo exuded caused the three ferocious beasts to feel immense pressure. That was a suppression that came from bloodline. No matter how strong a rooster was, it could not defeat a phoenix. No matter how ferocious a cat was, it would tremble in fear against a ferocious tiger. That was the suppression of bloodline. Although Su Zimo did not have the bloodline of a dragon phoenix, his essence spirit contained the dragon phoenix essence spirit, and could release the will of a dragon phoenix. That will was enough to intimidate most demons. Scram! Just as the nine-headed bird and the other demons hesitated and stopped in their tracks, a deafening roar sounded from afar. A living being spoke in the human tongue and strode over. Boom! 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 The ground trembled. On the distant horizon, an incomparably tall giant was sprinting over. He had a pair of eyes and no nose on his face. Instead, he had a gaping mouth. The giant shone with a silver luster, as though it was made of molten steel. It was filled with a metallic luster and looked invulnerable. That's the giant race. Duan Tianliang was shocked and hurriedly said, in my small kiliocosm, the giant race was the strongest race and reigned supreme throughout history. The giant race had boundless strength and could fight against dragons in melee. That silver luster is clearly a silver giant, with an extremely noble bloodline of the giant race. Duan Tianliang's spirit consciousness swept across the silver giant, and his expression turned even uglier. Level 6 Mystic Essence Realm. The giant race was the strongest among the various living beings, let alone a silver giant that was at level 6 Mystic Essence Realm. There was no chance of survival. As the silver giant charged over, the demons retreated. Even the nine-headed bird, Ing Zhao, and the giant hornet made way. Some of the demon beasts that could not dodge in time were trampled to death by the silver giant. They exploded into a bloody mist, and did not even have a corpse left. Ant, how dare you enter my territory? The silver giant had a ferocious expression as he roared at Su Zimo. I'm going to crush all of you. Silver giant with boundless strength? Su Zimo's blood chi surged. He was fearless and his eyes were like torches as he shouted, let's see how strong you are. Swoosh. Su Zimo moved. Facing the level 6 Mystic Essence Realm silver giant, he actually made the first move and charged forward. The giant race is clumsy and isn't agile enough. Don't fight him head-on, Duan Tianliang hurriedly shouted. But it was too late. Su Zimo had already made his move. You're courting death. The silver giant was enraged. He reached out a palm that shone with a silver luster, and slammed it down at Su Zimo. Big Yellow bared his teeth, as though he could see Su Zimo being smashed into a bloody mist. Duan Tianliang narrowed his eyes, and did not even dare to look. Chapter 1821. The silver giant's palm was spread open and covered the skies. Against the silver giant's attack, Su Zimo gripped his fists tightly, and his blood chi surged, as he released a punch with all his might. Su Zimo did not release any movement techniques to deal with the silver giant. This time, he wanted to test what kind of level a 9th grade Green Lotus true body could reach below the 4th level of the Mystic Origin stage. Boom! A deafening sound echoed from midair. Immediately after, the silver giant took a step back and almost fell. The demons were in an uproar. In the eyes of the ferocious beasts, Su Zimo was as insignificant as a speck of dust compared to the silver giant. However, that speck of dust was able to force the silver giant back when it collided with its palm. What sort of power was that? A look of shock flashed through the silver giant's eyes as well. Even he had not expected that this ant before him would be able to release such ferocious power. Boss isn't dead? Duan Tianliang opened his eyes with a look of disbelief. Woof woof woof. De Huang was elated as well, and barked wildly to boost Su Zimo's momentum. He was already tied to Su Zimo a long time ago. If Su Zimo could win this battle, he would be able to survive as well. If Su Zimo lost, he would be torn to shreds by the ferocious beasts that were eyeing him covetously as well. That's all there is to your strength. Su Zimo stood in midair, and looked at the silver giant not far away with an indifferent expression. Die! The silver giant actually strode forward, and stomped its gigantic feet on the ground. Clenching its palm into a fist, it punched towards Su Zimo viciously. Su Zimo was fearless and charged forward once more. Boom! The two fists collided and the world shook. The silver giant retreated once more. Su Zimo did not give the silver giant any time to catch his breath, and attacked consecutively with Qinglian's terrifying regeneration abilities. Bang! 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 The silver giant retreated continuously and shuddered. The demons were dumbfounded. One had to know that the silver giant was the overlord of this region. Even the nine-headed bird, Ing Zhao, and the giant wasp were under his rule. Never had he imagined that it would actually be the 6th-level profound origin realm silver giant that fell into a disadvantageous position in this battle and was completely suppressed. However, all the demons could tell. Although Su Zimo had the upper hand, it was almost impossible for him to kill the silver giant. The silver giant kept retreating, but its body was indestructible. Silver light flickered on its body, and it was barely injured. You do have some tricks up your sleeve. The silver giant could still speak in the middle of a great battle. He grinned and said, "However, your strength is only so. You can't hurt me at all." At this point in the battle, Su Zimo had already probed. At the 4th level of the Mystic Origin stage, Qinglian's strength would definitely be comparable to that of a 6th-level Mystic Origin stage cultivator. The silver giant was a special species. If it were any other self-cultivator, Qinglian could even suppress a level 6 Mystic Immortal with her full strength. At that thought, Su Zimo no longer wanted to tangle with the silver giant. The silver giant struck once more, punching towards Su Zimo. Shoo! Suddenly, a green beam of light shot out from Su Zimo's glabella. A bronze square cauldron that was 5 feet tall appeared. 3 sides were shattered and only one side was intact, exuding an ancient and mysterious aura. "Are you going to use your Dharma treasure?" The silver giant laughed loudly. "The fists of the giant tribe are the strongest weapons." The silver giant was right. The silver light that flowed around his body could even defend against the power and sharpness of most Dharma treasures. The golden giant of the giant tribe had an even more terrifying bloodline. The golden light around his body could even condense into a weapon to kill his enemies. Su Zimo's expression was cold. Without arguing, he lifted the bronze square cauldron and smashed it towards the silver giant's fist. Crack! The ear-piercing sound of bones cracking could be heard. Oh! Immediately after, the silver giant's expression changed starkly as it let out a tragic cry. Clutching its wrist, it stumbled back. The demons could clearly see that the silver giant's fist was dented by the bronze square cauldron and was badly mangled. "Why your lousy cauldron?" The silver giant glared at the bronze square cauldron that looked a little tattered in Su Zimo's hands, and its bell-like eyes were filled with fear. "Suppress!" Su Zimo hollered and lifted the bronze square cauldron, smashing it towards the silver giant once more. The silver giant wanted to dodge backwards. However, there was no way it could dodge due to its massive body and lack of agility. Helpless, the silver giant could only raise its arm to defend. Snap! The sound of bones cracking could be heard once more. The silver giant's arm was snapped by the bronze square cauldron. The broken bones were stained with silver blood. Flesh and blood hung from them, exposed to the outside world. It was a ghastly sight. Ah! The silver giant let out a painful roar. Su Zimo tossed the bronze square cauldron above the silver giant's head. As long as he used his spirit consciousness, the bronze square cauldron would smash down. At that time, a bloody hole would be created in the head of the silver giant. "Submit or die." Su Zimo's tone was cold and domineering, not giving the silver giant any other choice. "We are giants. We are giants." The silver giant had an indignant expression, as though it wanted to struggle and resist. However, he did not continue. Under Su Zimo's suppression, his aura weakened. "Submit." A moment later, the silver giant finally lowered its head and half knelt on the ground towards Su Zimo. The demons were shocked when they saw that. One had to know that the giants wouldn't kneel easily. They would only kneel to their leader or golden giants with an even more noble bloodline. Now that the silver giant chose to kneel and submit to the demons, there was no way it would betray them. Roar! Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit and suddenly opened his mouth. Facing the demons, he let out another dragon phoenix roar with a torrential aura. Previously, the silver giant was extremely far away and could not truly sense the aura of the roar. It was only at this moment that the silver giant's heart skipped a beat. It raised its head, and its eyes shone with fear. The aura and bloodline of this seemingly insignificant human seemed to be even more noble than it. Against the roar of the dragon phoenix, the demons bowed one after another. Led by the nine-headed bird, Ing Zhao and giant wasp, hundreds and thousands of ferocious beasts and demons lowered their heads and knelt towards Su Zimo in midair. At that moment, Su Zimo seemed like the lord of all demons. It was an extremely shocking scene. Duan Tianliang and Big Yellow were dumbfounded. Against that momentum, for some reason, Duan Tianliang could not control his legs and knelt on the ground. Big Yellow was already sprawled there obediently, wagging its tail rapidly and looking at Su Zimo with a fawning expression. End of chapter. Chapter 1822. Su Zimo settled down in this barren land and opened up a spirit farm nearby for Duan Tianliang to manage. Normally speaking, the rain flower and essence nurturing grass on Dragon Abyss planet ripened once every 100 years. However, as long as Qinglian's true body came to absorb the essence qi of heaven and earth for cultivation, it would attract extremely dense essence qi to gather here. The two types of immortal herbs would mature within a year. The other ferocious beasts, including the silver giant nine-headed bird, Ing Zhao and the giant bee all obeyed Su Zimo's orders and surrounded this area. Even if someone passed by this place, it would be difficult for them to notice that such a pure land was hidden in the midst of the demons. Su Zimo arranged everything and entered seclusion to cultivate. This time round, he had gained a lot after killing 500 soldiers of the Wolf Army and Zuyinga's shadow. There were close to 40,000 essence-gathering elixirs alone. Su Zimo was prepared to absorb and refine all 40,000 essence-gathering elixirs before making any plans. Normally speaking, the medicinal power of a single essence-gathering elixir was enough for an ordinary mystic immortal to cultivate for more than 10 days, or even a month. This also depended on the cultivation realm of the mystic immortal, the cultivation technique they cultivated, and their innate talent. For example, Duan Tianliang was only a stage 2 mystic immortal. A single essence-gathering elixir was enough for him to cultivate for more than 2 months. Although De Huang was a stage 5 mystic immortal, he still needed more than 20 days to completely absorb the medicinal power of a single essence-gathering elixir. However, it was different for Su Zimo. After arriving at Dragon Abyss planet, this was the first time Su Zimo consumed a essence-gathering elixir to cultivate. During this cultivation, he was shocked to discover that Qinglian's true body was like a bottomless pit, as it absorbed the essence qi of heaven and earth madly to refine the medicinal power of the essence-gathering elixir. With the true body of a rank 9 Qinglian, there was no need to worry about her body being unable to withstand absorbing too much essence qi of heaven and earth. Furthermore, back in Tianhuang mainland, because he only had a mortal body, even if he cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, it would be difficult for him to change his physique rapidly. Therefore, Su Zimo was extremely cautious and only consumed perfect-grade elixirs. It was because of this that he was able to succeed the human emperor and reach the undefeatable realm of the foundational level. And now rank 9 Qinglian's true body did not have to worry about that at all. There were indeed a lot of impurities in the soul-condensing pill. If too many of these impurities were consumed, it would definitely cause some subtle effects on the body. However, the 9th grade Qinglian's true body had seized the fortune of heaven and earth, baptizing her own flesh and blood all the time. After swallowing a core condensing pill, other than the pure medicinal power of the core condensing pill, the other impurities would be expelled from the body by Qinglian's true body. Su Zimo could cultivate without restraint. Coupled with the strength of the Prajna Nirvana Sutra, Su Zimo could even swallow and digest 10 origin condensing pills in a day. Under such circumstances, Su Zimo's cultivation was steadily increasing. And while Su Zimo was cultivating, Duan Tianliang and Big Yellow had also obtained unimaginable benefits. The heaven and earth essence qi in the vicinity was extremely dense. Not only did the growth of the two types of immortal herbs increase by 100 times, the cultivation speed of Duan Tianliang and Big Yellow increased significantly as well. Initially, Big Yellow followed beside Su Zimo because he was intimidated by the latter's methods and did not dare to leave. But now, even if Su Zimo punched and kicked him, he would not leave. He had decided to stay by Su Zimo's side and not leave at all. Before long, the silver giant, nine-headed bird, Ing Zhao and giant wasp sensed the abnormality of this place and gathered over carefully. When the few ferocious beasts saw that Su Zimo did not object, they were secretly delighted and cultivated fervently. There was no cycle in the mountains and no time in cultivation. In the blink of an eye, 10 years passed. In the past 10 years, there were fewer killings and fights in this wilderness, and it became extremely peaceful. Occasionally, there would be some disturbances in the surroundings, but they would be quickly suppressed by the silver giant and the other ferocious beasts. Although Su Zimo rarely showed himself and was almost always cultivating, the silver giant, nine-headed bird, Ing Zhao, giant wasp and the other ferocious beasts respected Su Zimo more and more. To be able to gather the heaven and earth essence qi, such a method was truly terrifying and beyond their understanding. In the past 10 years, their cultivation had also improved greatly. The improvement was even more obvious than when they had cultivated for 100 years, or even a few hundred years. Su Zimo was in seclusion in this wilderness, and did not know that in the past 10 years, Zuyanggu and the evil wolf army had been searching for him everywhere. The evil wolf army had even issued a bounty for his head. Just his whereabouts and news alone were worth 10,000 essence condensing pills. The price of his head was as high as 100,000 essence condensing pills. 100,000 essence condensing pills was enough to tempt any mystic immortal. Even stage 8 and stage 9 mystic immortals could not ignore such a temptation. Even so, after a few years, Zuyanggu and the evil wolf army still could not find any trace of Su Zimo. Although some news had been sent over, it was all confirmed to be false in the end. Su Zimo seemed to have disappeared from the Dragon Abyss planet. In the end, Zuyanggu and the evil wolf army gradually gave up. In their opinion, with such a high bounty, there was only one possibility: if there was no trace of Su Zimo, this person was already dead. On this day in the wilderness, a long howl suddenly sounded. It was as loud as the clouds and burst out with an extremely terrifying will. All the demons were silent. Duan Tianliang, Big Yellow, and the silver giant were all awakened from their cultivation and looked in the direction of the sound. Not long after, a man in a green robe walked out of the inconspicuous wooden house. He had delicate features and an indifferent expression. It was Su Zimo. Stage 5 Mystic Origin Realm. Duan Tianliang's divine sense swept across Su Zimo's body, and could not help but be shocked and exclaim. Big Yellow and the silver giant also spread out their divine senses to check Su Zimo's cultivation realm. They were shocked. One had to know that in the upper realm, the unit of time was almost all calculated in thousands of years. There were a total of 9 levels of the Mystic Origin Realm, and a mystic immortal's lifespan was 100,000 years. Most of the time, it would take tens of thousands of years to raise a small realm. In the past 10 years, although the cultivation speed of Big Yellow, the silver giant, and the others by Su Zimo's side had skyrocketed, they were still far from reaching the level where they could break through. Only Duan Tianliang had raised from Stage 2 Mystic Origin Realm to Stage 3 Mystic Origin Realm. No one expected that in just 10 years, Su Zimo had already become a Stage 5 Mystic Immortal when he came out of seclusion again. This is too scary. Big Yellow and the silver giant looked at Su Zimo as if they were looking at a monster. The speed of his cultivation made everyone's scalp go numb. Duan Tianliang even began to suspect that Su Zimo might be the reincarnation of some expert from the upper realm. Su Zimo's expression was calm. After 10 years of seclusion, he finally had a breakthrough. In the eyes of Duan Tianliang, Big Yellow, and the others, his cultivation speed was terrifying. However, Su Zimo knew that it was due to a huge amount of resources, powerful cultivation techniques, and a physique that had stolen the fortune of heaven and earth, that allowed him to reach his current realm. In the past 10 years, his 40,000 core condensation pills had been used up. Chapter 1823. Su Zimo came out of seclusion this time because, on one hand, he had a breakthrough. On the other hand, it was because he no longer had any core condensation pills. In the mystic essence realm, core condensation pills were extremely useful to cultivators. Furthermore, the Green Lotus True Body's need for origin condensation pills was much greater than that of ordinary cultivators. Although there were no core condensation pills in Su Zimo's storage bag, there were still more than 3 million stalks of core-nurturing grass and rain flowers. This was what he had collected from the Wolf Army and the shadow of the Blood Sun Valley 10 years ago. If these 3 million stalks of immortal herbs were to be exchanged in Zhuanggu, they could be exchanged for more than 30,000 core condensation pills. Of course, Su Zimo would definitely not go to Zhuanggu, because he had heard Xia Qingying mention before that if he could go to Dragon Lake City, 10 stalks of immortal herbs could be exchanged for 1 core condensation pill. More than 3 million stalks of immortal herbs were equivalent to more than 300,000 core condensation pills. In the past 10 years, Duan Tianliang had planted and managed the surrounding 100 acres of spirit fields and collected more than 100,000 stalks of immortal herbs. Su Zimo came out of seclusion this time and prepared to go to Dragon Lake City to take a look. What? Hearing Su Zimo's decision, Duan Tianliang was shocked. Dragon Lake City was the largest city on the entire Dragon Lake planet. It was also the only place where some native immortals were stationed. Ever since Duan Tianliang and the rest ascended to Dragon Lake City, they were chased out and never returned. Boss, the journey to Dragon Lake City is long. Other than some dangerous places, the most terrifying thing is that there are all kinds of bandits. Duan Tianliang did not continue speaking. The meaning behind his words was obvious. Although Su Zimo was a stage 5 mystic immortal with strong combat strength, and could even fight with people who were of a higher realm, their overall strength was still too weak. The silver giant, 9-headed bird, and other ferocious beasts could only step into the area occupied by cultivators in the form of mounts. If they appeared rashly, all the cultivators could kill them for no reason. On this Dragon Abyss star, there were too many Xian immortals that were stronger than the silver giant and the 9-headed bird. Duan Tianliang said, I remember that about 1,000 years ago, when the Lord of Snowy Ridge had just broken through to the 6th rank of the mystic immortal realm, he was also in high spirits and wanted to attempt to head to Dragon Lake City. Unexpectedly, he encountered bandits on the way. Snow Wind Ridge suffered heavy losses. It was only because Zhuanggu's men arrived in time that the Snow Wind Ridge Lord managed to survive and return. Su Zimo pondered for a moment, then said, Only the 3 of us will be heading to Dragon Lake City this time. We don't have too big of a target and won't draw attention, so the danger will be much smaller as well. Su Zimo looked at Big Yellow and said, You should know the way to Longyuan City, right? Big Yellow quickly nodded. All these years, he had followed the Zhuanggu army to Longyuan City. That route was relatively safe. After all, Zhuanggu was one of the 8 major forces on Longyuan planet. There were almost no bandits who dared to provoke Zhuanggu's army. When they saw Zhuanggu's flag from afar, many bandits retreated in the face of difficulties. Let's go. Su Zimo said, Let's go now. Instead of delaying here, it was better to go to Dragon Lake City as soon as possible and experience it. Dragon Lake City could be said to be the center of Longyuan planet. Only there could he solve the many doubts in Su Zimo's heart all these years. Duan Tianliang saw that Su Zimo had made up his mind and didn't dare to persuade him anymore. He could only brace himself and follow behind Su Zimo. This time, Su Zimo even specially let Duan Tianliang ride on Ying Zhao's body and took out a low-grade mystic rank magic treasure from his storage bag and gave it to him. Duan Tianliang immediately beamed with joy, and the haze in his heart was swept away. Boss, not to mention Dragon Lake City, even if there is a mountain of blades and a sea of flames ahead, I, Duan Tianliang, will accompany you. Duan Tianliang patted his chest and was extremely excited. The two men and two beasts didn't stay in the wildlands and directly left for Dragon Lake City. Big Yellow carried Su Zimo and led the way. About a few days later, Su Zimo's group passed by Wind Snow Ridge and looked at it from afar. Wind Snow Ridge hadn't changed much in the past 10 years. Standing in the distance, they could still see some spiritual farmers farming and some guards patrolling. Su Zimo didn't delay and rode on Big Yellow, bypassing Wind Snow Ridge and continuing forward. The two men and two beasts traveled day and night, only stopping to rest occasionally. Along the way, they really didn't encounter any trouble. Some of the bandits had already retreated when they saw the 5th level arcane origin realm Ing Zhao's aura. On this day, Su Zimo's group of 4 arrived at a mountain range. Not far ahead was a verdant mountain range. The mountain range rose and fell continuously, and it was verdant and lush. It stretched as far as the eye could see, and it was like a green ocean. This is the 100,000 Mountains. Over the years, Big Yellow's body had gradually become familiar with the human language. He said, "It will take about 10 days to pass through the 100,000 Mountains. Many bandits like to ambush cultivators in the 100,000 Mountains and kill them." Duan Tianliang said, "I heard that there are many ferocious beasts here." Big Yellow said, "There are indeed many. However, many years ago, the Zuyanga Valley Master took action and led the Zuyanga army to kill many ferocious beasts in the 100,000 Mountains and open a bloody path. Basically, no ferocious beasts dare to step on this bloody path, so it's much safer." Su Zimo nodded and patted Big Yellow's head. "Let's go." Big Yellow searched nearby for a while and finally found a mark. He went in from there and turned around before the path opened up. A bloody path led to the depths of the mountains, and there were corpses at the foot of the path. It was unknown how many ferocious beasts had died in the battle back then. Ancient trees stood on both sides of the bloody path, and it was dark. Su Zimo's group of 4 advanced on the bloody path. After walking for about a day, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. As though he sensed something, he tightened his legs and kicked Big Yellow's stomach. Big Yellow understood and hurriedly stopped. After following Su Zimo for so many years, Ing Zhao also realized something. He stopped and spread his spirit consciousness to scan the surroundings, and was on guard. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and looked at the dense forest on both sides of the bloody path in front of him, without saying a word. Before long, rustling sounds could be heard from the dense forest ahead. Immediately after, figures swayed. In the blink of an eye, at least hundreds of people emerged from the dense forest on both sides of the bloody path. They looked at Su Zimo's group of 4 with unfriendly expressions. Right in front of the bloody path, 3 figures rode ferocious beasts and slowly walked out of the dark forest. The ferocious beasts looked like ferocious tigers. They had huge feet and sharp claws and teeth, but when they stepped on the ground, they made no sound. In the blink of an eye, at least hundreds of people emerged from the dense forest on both sides of the bloody path. They looked at Su Zimo's group of 4 with unfriendly expressions. Right in front of the bloody path, 3 figures rode ferocious beasts and slowly walked out of the dark forest. The ferocious beasts looked like ferocious tigers. They had huge feet and sharp claws and teeth, but when they stepped on the ground, they made no sound. End of this chapter. Chapter 1824. Such a lineup wasn't small at all. Duan Tianliang, Big Yellow, and Ing Zhao were shocked in their hearts. There wasn't a single 7th-level mysterious immortal in the entire Snowwind Ridge, whereas, not only was the short-haired man in the lead a 7th-level mysterious immortal, the other cultivators in the surroundings weren't weak as well. A 5th-level mysterious immortal, and a 3rd-level mysterious immortal dares to enter the Grand Myriad Mountains? The person that spoke was the young man that stood at the left side of the short-haired man, a 6th-level mysterious immortal. This young man wore black clothes with a sword hanging from his waist, and he had slanted brows and starry eyes. He seemed to be extremely sharp, and his tone revealed a trace of contempt. "Who are all of you? Where are you from?" The young woman at the right side of the short-haired man frowned slightly, as she berated lightly. This woman was a 6th-level mysterious immortal as well. She wore red clothes with her long hair tied up, and she gave off an extremely neat and valiant feeling. The short-haired man didn't speak, but his gaze revealed an extremely oppressive dignity as he stared at Su Zimo and Duan Tianliang. Su Zimo cupped his fist slightly from afar and said, "My surname is Su, and I've just ascended to Dragon Lake Star not long ago. I haven't joined any power, and I want to head to Dragon Lake City to take a look today. Please be magnanimous." Su Zimo wasn't showing weakness, nor was he concealing his strength. The strength of this group of people before him wasn't weak. If they were to really fight, he was naturally fearless, but Duan Tianliang, Big Yellow, and Ying Zhao might not be able to survive. It would naturally be for the best if they were able to live in peace. Most importantly, Su Zimo had a feeling that this group of people before him looked like bandits that blocked the way. Yet their auras were poles apart from the group of people from the wolf army. Accurately speaking, the smell of blood on this group of people before him wasn't heavy. "Ha!" The black-clothed young man laughed lightly and said, "All of you are really audacious. You want to head to Dragon Lake City alive with such little cultivation?" The red-clothed woman nodded as well and said, "There's still a long way to go. Even if we let all of you pass, all of you will be unable to arrive at Dragon Lake City alive. If you want to head to Dragon Lake City alive, then your cultivation must be at the 7th level of the mysterious origin realm at least. All of you are still far from that level." The black-clothed young man curled his lips and said, "Let me give you a piece of advice. It's best if you return the way you came. At least you can save your lives." Duan Tianliang and Big Yellow were overjoyed when they heard that. Looking at the other party's posture, it seemed that they didn't intend to rob them or take their lives. Duan Tianliang quickly sent a voice transmission. "Boss, let's retreat. If it really doesn't work, let's retreat first and try another path." A strange look flashed across Su Zimo's eyes. Neither the black-clothed youth nor the red-clothed woman had any intention of robbing them of their storage bags. Although the black-clothed youth's expression was somewhat disdainful, and his words were somewhat harsh, he was still kindly advising them to leave. Were these people bandits? However, if they were not bandits, what were they preparing to do with such a large formation lying in ambush nearby? "Brother, have you heard of Xianggu?" At this moment, the short-haired man stared at Su Zimo and suddenly asked. Su Zimo was slightly stunned. Then he nodded and said, "Xianggu is one of the 8 major forces of Dragon Abyss planet. Of course I've heard of it." For some reason, the black-clothed youth and the red-clothed woman suddenly became vigilant. They looked at Su Zimo with a hint of wariness in their eyes. "Big brother, you're still the most thoughtful. This green-clothed cultivator is so strange. It's indeed possible that he's from Xianggu." The black-clothed youth sent a voice transmission with his consciousness. The red-clothed woman also looked at the short-haired man and sent a voice transmission. "Could these two be spies sent by Xianggu? If that's the case, we can't let them leave." The short-haired man nodded slightly and suddenly raised his voice. "We're going to do something big here, but your identity and background are really suspicious. To be safe, I can only wrong you and keep you here first." Duan Tianliang was shocked and hurriedly said, "Big brother, you can't do this. You just said that you're going to let us leave. Why are you going back on your words?" Seeing Duan Tianliang so nervous, the black-clothed man became even more vigilant and sneered. "I was almost fooled by you. Just now. I was the one who asked you to leave, but my big brother hasn't agreed yet. The brothers around us haven't agreed yet." After saying this, the many cultivators in the forest on both sides of the bloody road had already closed in on Su Zimo and the others, surrounding them in the middle with unfriendly expressions. The short-haired man smiled and said, "Brother Su, you don't have to be nervous. I'm just keeping you by my side. I won't harm your lives or rob your things. When today's matter is over, I'll naturally let you go. Now I can only wrong you." Hearing this, Duan Tianliang's expression relaxed slightly, and he heaved a sigh of relief. No matter what, at least his life was saved. From the beginning to the end, Su Zimo's expression was calm, but the confusion in his heart was getting bigger and bigger. The short-haired burly man pondered for a moment and said to the red-robed woman beside him, "Little sister, take them down and guard them personally." After pausing for a moment, a murderous look flashed through the short-haired burly man's eyes as he said in a deep voice, If the two of them try anything funny, don't show mercy and kill them without mercy. In the short-haired burly man's opinion, only a rank 6 mystic immortal guarding Su Zimo, and the others could ensure that nothing would go wrong. Don't worry, big brother. The red-robed woman nodded with a resolute gaze. Duan Tianliang stole a glance at Su Zimo. Su Zimo had a relaxed expression as he smiled. Let's go. To think that we would be reduced to prisoners so quickly. Su Zimo had no intention of resisting for the time being. He wanted to see where these people came from, and what they wanted. When the red-robed woman saw how cooperative Su Zimo was, she did not make things difficult for them, and merely brought them to the forest far away, watching them from the side. The short-haired burly man looked at Su Zimo's back view and frowned in deep thought. Big brother, did you discover anything? The black-robed young man asked. The short-haired burly man shook his head. No, I just feel like I've seen this person somewhere before. He looks familiar. Strange, the black-robed young man added hurriedly. I had the same feeling earlier on, but I can't recall where I've seen this person before. Forget it, we'll talk about this later. Let's hide first and not expose ourselves. Taking a deep breath of air, the short-haired burly man waved his hand and hollered, Retreat! The moment he said that, hundreds of figures disappeared into the forest on both sides of the bloody path, in an extremely fast and disciplined manner. In a few breaths, the bloody path returned to silence. The red-robed woman glared at Su Zimo and Duan Tianliang and whispered, No matter what you see later on, don't make a sound. Otherwise, slapping her storage bag, the red-robed woman pulled out a long saber with a cold glint and pointed it at Su Zimo and the others. The meaning behind her words was obvious. Duan Tianliang's head nodded repeatedly like a chick pecking at rice. Su Zimo merely smiled without saying anything. End of chapter. Chapter 1825. Time passed gradually. It was silent on both sides of the bloody path. The forest was sinister and filled with a faint killing intent. Night fell. Su Zimo was in the middle of the forest and was guarded by many bandits. He was not as nervous as Duan Tianliang. He had a calm expression and was resting with his eyes closed the entire time, as though he could not sense any danger at all. Even the red-bloused woman was surprised. I wonder if he's truly courageous, or if he's heartless. The red-bloused woman thought to herself. All of a sudden, Su Zimo opened his eyes, and a divine glint shone in his eyes before retracting it swiftly. Sensing something, the red-bloused woman was instantly on guard. Gripping the saber in her hands tightly, she glared at Su Zimo and whispered, What are you trying to do? Someone's here. Su Zimo replied softly. The red-bloused woman frowned slightly, and did not dare to use her spirit consciousness to check out for fear of alerting the enemy. She listened for a moment, but did not hear anything. Her expression darkened as she whispered, You'd better behave yourself and not play any tricks. If you continue spouting nonsense, don't blame me for splattering your blood on the spot. Su Zimo smiled and did not argue with her. Nearly a quarter of an hour passed. Suddenly, the red-bloused woman's expression changed. She had sensed something amiss in the distance. Many cultivators were rushing over. Right then, the short-haired burly man and the black-robed young man turned around and nodded slightly at the red-bloused woman. The short-haired burly man and the black-robed young man had clearly sensed something as well. Suddenly, the red-bloused woman recalled something and glanced at Su Zimo beside her with a bewildered expression. That was because this person suddenly reminded her that someone was here 15 minutes ago. But how was that possible? This person was only a grade 5 mystic immortal, and yet he possessed such frightening hearing? However, if this person had not sensed it beforehand, could it be a coincidence? Suddenly, the red-bloused woman felt as though there was a layer of mist shrouding the green-robed man, making him unfathomable. Su Zimo looked straight ahead and was unmoved, as though he could not sense the red-bloused woman's scrutinizing gaze. Before long, an irregular vibration came from the ground in the distance. This time, even Duan Tianliang noticed it. About 1,000 people. The red-clothed woman listened carefully for a while and made a judgment. Her expression relaxed slightly. This situation was not much different from the information they had received before. If nothing unexpected happened, Today's matter would definitely succeed. Su Zimo shook his head slightly and said softly, "More than that." "What?" The red-robed woman was stunned. Before she could understand the meaning of the two words Su Zimo, there were already many figures on the bloody road not far in front of her. This army of over 1,000 people had already entered everyone's line of sight. Through the dense forest, Duan Tianliang could not help but widen his eyes when he saw the battle flag raised by the army. Big Yellow was also shocked. This war flag was Zuyinga's war flag. Even Su Zimo was slightly surprised. He didn't expect that the woman in red and her gang would have designs on Zuyingu. One had to know that Zuyingu was one of the 8 major forces on the Longyuan planet. Generally speaking, even the 4 great bandits would not casually fight against the 8 major forces. Su Zimo's eyesight was extremely strong and could clearly see the appearances of the cultivators in this army. The leader was actually someone he was familiar with, the eldest young master of Zuyingu, Chen Xianyang. After 10 years, Chen Xuanyang's cultivation was still at the 6th level of the mystic immortal realm. Chen Xianyang wore white armor and held a long spear in his hand. Riding on a tall horse, he looked extremely dignified. Beside Chen Xianyang was a slightly older old man. This old man was bare-handed and did not wear any armor. He only wore a long gray robe, and his long black and white hair was scattered casually. He had a calm expression. This old man was a 7th-level mystic immortal. By the looks of it, this army led by Chen Xianyang should be preparing to head to Longyuan City. The strength of both sides seemed to be about the same. Seeing that Chen Xianyang was getting closer and closer to the ambush spot of the short-haired man and his gang, the woman in red became extremely nervous. She looked at Chen Xuanyang's direction and turned back to stare at Su Zimo. The woman in red's gaze was stern as she warned Su Zimo not to make any rash movements and not to make any noise. Suddenly, the short-haired man raised his arm and shouted in a low voice, "Kill!" Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The cultivators who were lying in ambush in the forest suddenly threw out the long spears in their hands with all their might. They broke through the air and let out a series of soul-stirring sounds. The spears were like a rain of arrows that shot towards the 1,000-strong army of Zuyingu in the middle of the bloody road. The corners of Chen Xuanyang's mouth curled up slightly, and a trace of mockery flashed past his eyes. The old man beside him suddenly shouted softly. The 1,000-strong army of Zuyingu seemed to be prepared as they changed their formation rapidly and formed a gigantic circle. The outermost Zuyingu cultivators took out gigantic shields from their storage bags one after another and placed them in front of them. Some of the Zuyingu cultivators in the middle raised their shields high above their heads. With that, the Zuyingu army formed an impenetrable defensive formation that blocked all the long spears. A few of the long spears pierced towards Chen Xianyang. However, Chen Xianyang waved the long spear in his hands gently and pushed them away with a relaxed expression. Su Zimo shook his head gently. The situation before him was clear. The Zuyingu were clearly prepared for this. If the short-haired man's group continued to attack, they would most likely be surrounded by the Zuyingu. When he saw how swift the Zuyingu's reaction was, a look of hesitation flashed through the short-haired man's eyes. His rationality told him that his plan this time round had failed. However, the arrow was already knocked, and he had to release it. If he retreated just like that, he would be indignant. Just as he was hesitating, the black-robed young man beside him could not hold it in any longer, and took the lead to dash out, shouting, "Brothers, kill! Take revenge for the dead! Let the Zuyingu pay with their blood! Let the Zuyingu pay with their blood!" Many cultivators' blood surged, and they could not care less, as they charged out of the forest towards the Zuyingu army. When the short-haired man saw that, he could only roar and charge out on his ferocious beast with his gigantic axe. The other party had a Stage 7 Mystic Immortal. They had to get rid of this Stage 7 Mystic Immortal. Ha 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 ha. Chen Xianyang looked at the many cultivators charging over without any fear in his eyes. Instead, he roared with laughter. Good timing. Sky Pillar Stronghold Wind Cloud Gang, Righteous Mountain Village. I was just worried that I couldn't find you guys. To think that you guys would deliver yourselves to me today. Today, I'll make the remnants of the 3 factions disappear from the Dragon Abyss planet. Kill them. Chen Xinyang raised his long spear and shouted. The old man beside him leaped up from his warhorse and charged towards the short-haired man. End of chapter. Chapter 1826. The black-robed youth unsheathed the sword on his back and charged towards Chen Xinyang, who was at the front. He said coldly, Chen Xinyang, hand over your life. Buzz. A sword hum sounded, accompanied by streaks of chilling sword light. The black-robed youth formed a sword seal with one hand and gripped his sword tightly with the other. He stabbed forward and instantly, dozens of sword lights and sword shadows were released. His swordsmanship was extraordinary. Every ray of sword light emitted a sharp aura. Oomph! Chen Xinyang sneered with a mocking expression. The absolute shadow sword technique is too weak in your hands. Today I'll send you to hell. Chen Xinyang channeled his blood qi and waved the spear in his hands. Heaven and earth yuan qi revolved around the spear. The spear seemed to be alive. Like a snake, it flicked its tongue in midair and stabbed towards the black-robed youth. The sword and spear collided. Clang! Clang! Sword qi and spear shadows tore through the air. The two of them unleashed their most intense attacks the moment they clashed, and neither of them gave in. On the other side, the short-haired burly man had already exchanged blows with the gray-robed elder from Ziyanggu. It was clear that the short-haired burly man was proficient in body-tempering techniques. Wielding a gigantic axe that could split open the heavens, every single move he made was forceful, ferocious, and intimidating. As for the gray-robed old man, he didn't seem to be an expert, but his every move was filled with a terrifying amount of power. The gray-robed elder fought the short-haired burly man barehanded, and did not retreat at all. Clang! Clang! His palms collided with the short-haired burly man's gigantic axe. If one focused their attention, they would realize that the gray-robed elder was wearing a pair of silver gloves on his palms. They were indestructible, and even the short-haired burly man's gigantic axe could not shake them. Brat! How long has it been since you stepped into Mystic Essence Realm Level 7? The gray-robed elder sneered and said proudly, I've been at Mystic Essence Realm Level 7 for tens of thousands of years. How dare you plot against my Ziyanggu with your puny skills? Old dog, you're already old. Your qi and blood are deteriorating. The short-haired man was not affected at all. Instead, his aura grew even stronger as he said loudly, I'm at my peak, and my qi and blood are strong. Even if I exhaust you, I can exhaust you to death. What if you count us in? Right at this moment, two figures suddenly flashed out from behind Ziyanggu. Their auras were terrifying, and they were on par with the gray-robed old man. They were actually two 7th-level mysterious immortals. Kill. The level 7 mystic immortal on the left was a skinny, shifty-eyed man. This person held two daggers in both hands and walked in a strange footwork. His body swayed a few times, and in the blink of an eye, he was already beside the short-haired man. On the right was a woman with heavy makeup. She was extremely flirtatious. She was holding a silver needle that was as thin as a cow's hair. She stood in the distance and looked at the short-haired man with a smile. Even though Su Zimo and the others were far away from the battlefield, they could still smell the pungent fragrance coming from the woman. Not good. The lady's expression changed drastically, and she exclaimed, It's the shadowless assassin and Queen Orchid. Ziyanggu has been prepared for this. He's been ambushed. Just as she finished speaking, a shocking change happened on the battlefield. The shadowless assassin with two daggers came to the short-haired man's side and suddenly attacked. The daggers circled in front of him, as if a whirlwind was formed. The short-haired man was entangled by the gray-robed old man, and could not be distracted at all. He could only reluctantly retreat. Splat! Even so, there was a huge wound on his arm that was dripping with fresh blood. Boom! The gray-robed old man took advantage of the situation and punched him. The short-haired man endured the excruciating pain and clashed with the gray-robed old man once again. At the same time, the short-haired man felt his heart palpitate, as if a great disaster was about to befall him in the next moment. Before he could react, a silver orchid floated in front of him, emitting a pungent fragrance. Ah! The short-haired man was shocked and quickly retreated. One had to know that this was Queen Orchid's technique. This orchid was formed by Queen Orchid's silver needle and contained a deadly poison. Once released, it was extremely lethal. Hee hee. Queen Orchid stood in the distance and chuckled. Little brother Yu Hao, I was merciful earlier on. If I really wanted to kill you, you would be a dead man by now. Orchid, the gray-robed old man frowned slightly. You can have any man you want. Hurry up and join forces to kill this lad. Heis. Queen Orchid sighed softly. I really can't bear to part with you. Little brother Yu Hao, I'll give you a chance. If you listen to me obediently, I'll spare your life. How about that? Old witch, how dare you try to seduce me with this kind of behavior? The short-haired man burst into laughter fearlessly. Queen Orchid's expression darkened instantly and turned extremely terrible. Brat, I gave you face, but you don't want it. Let's see which of you can escape today. Queen Orchid's tone changed and was sinister. At the same time, when the black-robed young man saw that the short-haired man was in danger, he was distracted and was almost pierced by Chen Xuanyang's spear. He was flustered for a moment. Sanguine Sun Divine Spear. Chen Xuanyang seized the opportunity and discovered the black-robed young man's weakness. Suddenly, he attacked and spun the spear rapidly with both hands, drawing an arc in midair that vaguely conjured a blood-colored sun. Clang! When the black-robed young man's sword struck the blood-colored sun, he suddenly felt an extremely strong power and lost his grip on his sword, causing it to fly out of his hands. In the blink of an eye, the black-robed young man was in danger as well. Kill! Right then, not far away, iron hoofs clanged and dust billowed. A large army of cultivators was charging over on war horses with a murderous aura. The war flag of Zuyanga was extremely striking. There were around 4,000 cultivators in the group. This time round, Zuyanga did not send 1,000 cultivators. There were 5,000 of them. When they saw that, the hundreds of cultivators on the short-haired burly man's side were ashen, and despair flashed through their eyes. It's over. The red-robed woman knew very well that there was a high chance that all of them would be wiped out this time round. Miss, we can't hold on any longer. Hurry and leave. At this moment, a heavily injured cultivator stumbled over. Looking at the red-robed woman, he used the last of his strength to say those words. The red-robed woman's face was pale. Although her eyes shone with fear, they quickly turned resolute as she grit her teeth. Second brother is in danger. I have to save them. Just as the red-robed woman was about to leave, she seemed to have thought of something and turned around hurriedly. She said to Su Zimo and Duan Tianliang, hurry and run for your lives. The further the better. The moment she said that, she was stunned. The green-robed cultivator behind her had already disappeared. Right from the beginning, she had not noticed it at all. Where's that person? The red-robed woman asked instinctively. Duan Tianliang blinked and pointed to the battlefield in the distance. I think he's there. The red-robed woman turned back and looked at the battlefield. Immediately after, she saw something that she would never forget for the rest of her life. Chapter 1827. Unknowingly, the green-robed cultivator had already arrived on the battlefield. Furthermore, he was already behind the shadowless assassin. Perhaps it was because of the chaos on the battlefield, or because the shadowless assassin was focused on the short-haired burly man. He did not notice the approaching danger. In any case, by the time the red-robed woman looked over, Su Zimo was already standing behind the shadowless assassin. The two of them were inches apart. Immediately after, the shadowless assassin seemed to have sensed something and dodged to the side without turning back. Su Zimo attacked. He did not use any earth-shattering methods, nor did he release any mystical abilities or immortal arts. He simply extended his palm and slapped the top of the shadowless assassin's head. It was too fast, and the shadowless assassin could not dodge it. Piak! There was a crisp sound. Under the red-robed woman's gaze, the shadowless assassin's head was like a round watermelon that was instantly crushed by Su Zimo's palm and exploded, causing blood to splatter everywhere. That power was enough to shatter the shadowless assassin's essence spirit. A mystic immortal of stage 7 was dead. Shadowless. The gray-robed old man was enraged as he hollered. Goddess Orchid narrowed her eyes as well. It was not only the shadowless assassin. Even the gray-robed old man, Goddess Orchid and everyone else present did not notice how Su Zimo had arrived behind the shadowless assassin. By the time they noticed something amiss, they saw the shadowless assassin being slapped to death by Su Zimo. The gray-robed old man's spirit consciousness swept past Su Zimo's body rapidly. Mystic Essence Realm Level 5. The gray-robed old man felt relieved. A mere mystic immortal of Stage 5 was nothing to be afraid of, and posed no threat to them. At the same time, he was secretly regretful. The shadowless assassin was truly too careless. If not for that, he would not have been ambushed and killed in a single palm strike. Almost everyone who witnessed this scene came to the same conclusion. That was because no one believed that a mystic immortal of Stage 5 would possess the strength to kill a mystic immortal of Stage 7. Actually, the gray-robed old man and the others did not know. Just now, in order to kill the shadowless assassin as quickly as possible, Su Zimo had even used the 9 true dragon flashes. This was a movement technique that was equivalent to teleportation. On the chaotic battlefield, Su Zimo blinked behind the shadowless assassin. How could he have noticed? In other words, just now, Su Zimo had chosen to attack the shadowless assassin. If he chose to attack the gray-robed old man and consort Orchid, their fates would be the same as the shadowless assassin. This kind of terrifying movement technique was a part of one's strength. In the distant forest, the red-clothed woman's expression still hadn't relaxed. Even if the shadowless assassin died, Zuyangde still had 2 level 7 mystic immortals and 5,000 soldiers. On their side, the short-haired man and the black-clothed youth were both injured. Of the remaining several hundred people, nearly half of them were killed or injured in this short collision. It was a disastrous loss. They had still lost this battle. The red-clothed woman was just about to move and join the battle when she saw the 5th level mystic origin stage cultivator actually charge towards the gray-robed old man. A level 5 mystic immortal wants to challenge a level 7 mystic immortal? Is he courting death? This thought flashed through the red-dressed girl's mind. You don't know what's good for you. The gray-robed old man glared at Su Zimo, who was charging over with a cold expression, and said slowly, I was just about to look for you. You've delivered yourself to me. Very good. The gray-robed old man strode forward. His blood chi surged and his fists shone with silver light as he smashed them towards Su Zimo. Freeze! Su Zimo's expression was calm as he activated his primordial spirit and suddenly spoke. Minor mystique, immobilization art. The gray-robed old man shuddered. After all, there was a difference of 2 levels between the two of them. Almost instantly, the gray-robed old man broke free from the immobilization art and wasn't affected much. Humph, the gray-robed old man sneered. Insignificant skill. Is that so? Su Zimo smiled indifferently. Insignificant skill. I'll take your life. Just a moment of stagnation was enough for him. Suddenly, a damaged bronze square tripod flew out from his glabella and smashed towards the gray-robed old man. The gray-robed old man had just broken free from the immobilization art and could not dodge in time. He could only raise his fists and punch towards the incoming bronze square tripod. Crack, crack, crack. The next moment, a series of bone-cracking sounds could be heard in an extremely horrifying manner. Right in front of the red-dressed girl, the gray-robed old man's gloves shattered, and the bones in his arms were shattered into several pieces by the bronze square tripod. Even the giants with their strong physiques in the past could not defend against the power of the bronze square tripod. This gray-robed old man was even weaker. Ah! The gray-robed old man's face was drained of blood as he let out a tragic cry. Both of his arms hung limply by his side. The bones inside had already been shattered by the bronze square cauldron. Although an injury as such wasn't fatal for mystic immortals, it meant that they were basically crippled. The moment the gray-robed old man's scream sounded, it came to a stop. Su Zimo had leaped forward and raised the bronze square tripod, smashing it against the gray-robed old man's head. Bang! The gray-robed old man's head was smashed, and his primordial spirit was destroyed. He died on the spot. The situation on the battlefield changed in an instant. No one had expected the situation to change so drastically in the blink of an eye. On Zuyangde's side, 2 Stage 7 mystic immortals had died one after another. Moreover, These two Stage 7 mystic immortals had died too quickly. Not many people could react in time. To Su Zimo, the key to this battle was to kill the 3 Stage 7 mystic immortals as quickly as possible. If the 3 Stage 7 mystic immortals died, the rest were nothing to be afraid of. It's you. Chen Xinyang finally noticed this scene, and his gaze fell on Su Zimo. He was shocked and his eyes were filled with endless hatred. Back then, in order to hunt down Su Zimo, he had lost as many as 7 of his personal guards. In the past 10 years, with the bounty offered by the Wolf Army, they could not find Su Zimo's whereabouts. He did not expect to meet him here. Moreover, this person had just appeared and ruined his plans. With the new and old hatred added together, Chen Xuanyang's eyes were red. He pointed his spear at Su Zimo and roared, "Kill! Kill this person!" In an instant, at least 1,000 people from Zuyinga rushed towards Su Zimo and attacked him. At the same time, Goddess Orchid's expression was solemn. She did not dare to be careless. With a wave of her sleeve, 10 silver orchids appeared and shot towards Su Zimo. These 10 orchids almost sealed off Su Zimo's escape routes. One must know that each orchid was formed by more than 100 silver needles. 10 orchids were equivalent to more than 1,000 silver needles. If they landed beside Su Zimo and suddenly exploded, the destructive power would be extremely terrifying. Su Zimo's expression did not change. He activated his primordial spirit and circled his hands in front of him, quickly forming a huge shield. There seemed to be mysterious engravings on it, and it emitted a dazzling light. Innate divine ability Spirit Turtle Shield. Chapter 1828. There were more than 10 silver orchids that emitted a pungent fragrance. The moment they made contact with the divine light released by the Spirit Turtle Shield, they exploded. Every single orchid shot out more than 100 silver needles that were as thin as a cow's hair and landed on the Spirit Turtle Shield instantly. The Spirit Turtle Shield was an innate divine power imparted to Su Zimo by Daiyu. Not only did it possess an extremely frightening defense, it could also release a powerful recoil. Su Zimo was 2 cultivation realms apart from Goddess Orchid. If Goddess Orchid released a ferocious divine power or immortal art, the Spirit Turtle Shield would only be able to defend against it with great difficulty. However, the terrifying thing about the 10 silver orchids was not their strength. Instead, it was the silver needles that were as thin as hair. If those soft silver needles were scattered in midair, they would release an extremely frightening lethality. However, they could not penetrate the Spirit Turtle Shield when they landed on it. On the contrary, the 1,000 silver needles were sent flying in all directions by the recoil of the Spirit Turtle Shield. At that moment, the 1,000-odd cultivators from Zuyingu had just charged forward. Some of them were met with a calamity before they could even get close. One after another, the silver needles pierced the bodies of the Zuyingu cultivators. Due to the fact that the silver needles were so thin that they pierced through flesh, everyone did not feel any pain and merely felt a slight itch. However, before the Zuyingu cultivators could take more than a few steps, the poison in the silver needles had already spread throughout their bodies and even entered their consciousnesses. By the time the cultivators realized that something was amiss, it was already too late. Their faces had already turned silvery white, as though they were covered in a layer of silver frost. They collapsed limply with widened eyes. They died with grievances. Some of the cultivators reacted in time and released their essence spirits to escape the battlefield. However, in the upper world, without a physical body, they were no different from wandering ghosts with only their essence spirits left. Some of the cultivators were extremely alert and used the mystic grade dermic treasures in their hands to block many of the silver needles and survived. Even so, Goddess Orchid's attack this time round killed at least 500 cultivators from Zuyingu. When he saw that, the short-haired burly man was invigorated and could not help but burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. Old witch, you're truly decisive when you attack. You're even so ruthless to your own people. If you do that a few more times, I think the remaining 4,000-odd cultivators from Zuyingu will be killed by you as well. Many Zuyingu cultivators knew that what was happening just Zuyingu was an accident. Or rather, it was not Goddess Orchid's fault. She was Zuyingo, goddess orchids, goddess, goddess orchids, goddess, goddess orchids, goddess orchids bodies, goddess, 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 Xuanya, goddess, 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 goddess. Shua, Shua's you, goddesses, goddess, goddess, goddesses. You think too highly of yourself. I never thought of scheming against you. As right goddess. Goddesses Su's. Before he finished his sentence, Su Zimo suddenly extended his palm and formed a gigantic millstone in midair, crushing down on Goddess Orchid with a ferocious aura. The Great Chaos Palm. This was the ultimate technique of the Hunyuan sect in the mortal world. Wu Dao had already mastered it and integrated it into Wu Dao's cauldron. Before he ascended, he had already imparted it to Qinglian's real body. You're courting death. Goddess Orchid was not afraid at all. She stretched out her hand and slammed it against Su Zimo's palm. It seemed that all her methods had no effect on this green-robed man in front of her. Seeing that Su Zimo was getting closer and closer, the fear in Goddess Orchid's heart grew greater and greater. Finally, she let out a scream, put down all her pride, and turned to escape. Facing a Stage 5 Mystic Immortal, she, a Stage 7 Mystic Immortal, chose to escape. However, she did not manage to escape. Instead, she felt as if her feet were entangled by something. Goddess Orchid looked down. She did not know when, but emerald green plants and vines had crawled all over her feet, firmly restraining her on the spot. The Grade 9 creation Qinglian could easily move all the plants in this forest with just a thought. It's over. This thought flashed across Goddess Orchid's mind, and she felt a pain at the back of her head. The next moment she completely lost consciousness. 2K Reading Network. Chapter 1829. With Goddess Orchid's skills, she could easily break free from the restraints of these plants and vines. However, these plants and vines could only restrain Goddess Orchid's body for a moment. For Su Zimo, that was enough. Under everyone's gaze, Su Zimo stepped forward and pierced Goddess Orchid's head with his finger, destroying her primordial spirit. In the next moment, Goddess Orchid fell to the ground like the many withered plants under her feet. She was dead. At this point in the battle, the 3 Stage 7 Mystic Immortals of Zuyingo had all died. The whole process from Su Zimo's attack to the death of the 3 Stage 7 Mystic Immortals only took a dozen breaths. Everything happened too quickly. There were even many cultivators who could not accept this fact for a while. Eldest young master, what should we do? The remaining Stage 6 Mystic Immortals of Zuyingo lost their composure. They looked at Chen Xianyang in fear, and asked in a low voice. Chen Xuanyang's face was gloomy. The death of the 3 Stage 7 Mystic Immortals had a great impact on the entire battle. At the very least, it was a huge blow to the morale of Zuyingo's side. At this moment, a trace of fear and timidity flashed across the eyes of many Zuyingo cultivators. Chen Xianyang was unwilling to accept this. The short-haired man and his group were the remnants of the 3 major forces. All these years, they had been secretly opposing Zuyingo. Chen Xianyang had waited for this day with great difficulty. He had set up a trap to capture this group of people in one fell swoop. Could it be that he had to return empty-handed today? Moreover, Su Zimo was also a thorn in his side. He had to kill him. Could it be that he had to return to Zuyingo today? At this moment, Chen Xianyang did not realize that the current situation was no longer under his control. He was still thinking about whether to retreat or fight. Su Zimo was ready to attack and kill them all in the 100,000 mountains. I can't retreat. Soon Chen Xianyang made a decision. With this retreat, not only would he lose all face, even Zuyingo's reputation would probably fall to the bottom of the valley, and it would be looked down upon and mocked by the other powers on Dragon Abyss Star. Kill. Chen Xianyang gritted his teeth and said coldly, he's only a level 5 Mystic Immortal. The only reason he was able to kill Shadowless and the others was because of some unorthodox methods. Including me, we have 5 6th rank Mysterious Immortals and over 4,000 Zuyingo disciples. If we attack with our full strength, I don't believe we can't kill a 5th rank Mysterious Immortal. Everyone listen up. I, Chen Xianyang, will reward anyone who can kill this man with 100,000 core condensing pills. Chen Xianyang said loudly. With a generous reward, there would definitely be brave men. Many Zuyinga cultivators were still a little afraid at first, but when they heard this, many of them looked at Su Zimo with a burning gaze. Even a few hesitant level 6 mystic immortals were tempted. That's right, kill him. A level 6 mystic immortal stood out and said in a low voice. Just now, he killed Shadowless and the others, and he has already used many methods. Everyone be careful and avoid those methods. Just now, everyone had seen Su Zimo take out a broken cauldron and kill the gray-robed old man. Therefore, many cultivators would try their best to avoid going head-on with the bronze square cauldron. Condense. A one-eyed level 6 mystic immortal suddenly attacked and shouted. Standing afar, he activated his primordial spirit and unleashed a minor theurgy. The theurgy filled the air and condensed into a spinning eyeball. With a strange gaze, it stared at Su Zimo. Boom! Another level 6 mystic immortal attacked at the same time and unleashed a minor theurgy. The theurgy filled the air and quickly formed a spinning axe in the air, chopping at Su Zimo's head. The other level 6 mystic immortals also attacked and unleashed their minor theurgies. Su Zimo was fearless. He activated his chi and blood and shook his body, breaking free from the power of the theurgy eyeball. He formed different sword seals with both hands and shouted, "Slash!" Su Zimo waved his hands and slashed forward with his sword. The sword seal in his left hand slashed out a dragon snake. A dragon's roar came from the sky. A divine dragon descended and crashed into the crowd, killing everyone in its path. The ground split apart, and the soaring serpent soared into the sky. It flapped its flaming wings and roared loudly, spewing hot red lava that splashed into the crowd. Ah! 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 More than 4,000 cultivators in Zuyinga panicked and fell into a sea of fire. Hysterical screams could be heard. A series of bedazzling sword chi burst forth from Su Zimo's right hand. It was white and extremely sharp, as though it was going to slice the entire world into pieces. When the heavens unleashed their killing intent, the stars shifted. When the earth unleashed its killing intent, the dragon snake rose. The two great sword arts were released at the same time, and their killing intent surged. It was as though they wanted to destroy the world. Even if some cultivators could escape the claws of the divine dragon, they could not escape the flames of the soaring serpent. Even if they could avoid the slaughter of the dragon snake, it was difficult for them to defend against the sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword chi. Even the minor level 6 mystic immortals released just now was destroyed by multiple heaven-slaying sword chi, let alone the level 3, level 4 and level 5 mystic immortals. Although the power of the eyeball was strange, it was extremely fragile, and was penetrated by a single heaven-slaying sword chi. Before the incoming axe could land on Su Zimo, it was sliced by a few heaven-slaying sword chi, and dissipated into the world. That was an extremely shocking scene. It was as though the apocalypse had arrived, and those mystic immortals were like lowly ants that struggled and roared in the apocalypse, but were helpless. The red-robed woman stood in the forest, and was completely dumbfounded. Her mouth was agape, and her eyes were filled with endless shock. Was that power really something a level 5 mystic immortal could release? Not to mention him. Even Duan Tianliang, Big Yellow, and Ning Zhao were grimacing in pain and gasping. Although they had been by Su Zimo's side for 10 years, they had never seen Su Zimo make a move. How could they have expected that Su Zimo would create such a terrifying scene the moment he made a move? Actually, the cultivators on the Dragon Abyss planet had ascended from the lower realm and had never left. Their knowledge was limited, and they did not recognize the two great sword arts. If some of the exalted immortals of the natives saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked. The heavenly slay and earthly slay sword techniques were infamous even in the upper realm. It was completely logical that the two great sword arts could release such terrifying power. On the battlefield, the two great sword arts exploded and blood splattered everywhere as wails filled the air. Those level 6 mystic immortals could only barely protect themselves with their Dharma treasures and divine abilities. At that moment, the few people who just now wanted to join forces to kill Su Zimo had deep fear in their eyes. At that moment, Su Zimo arrived in the air. A level 6 mystic immortal looked nervous as he stared at Su Zimo, who was not far away. He only felt that one of Su Zimo's eyes was getting brighter and brighter, becoming extremely dazzling. Suddenly, Su Zimo's right eye emitted a blazing light that instantly entered the person's glabella. The illumination eye. This level 6 mystic immortal was caught off guard and was killed on the spot by the illumination eye. You still want to avoid my means? Su Zimo scoffed coldly. Do you think you can dodge my methods? Chapter 1830. The illumination eye had become even more terrifying after going through the heavenly tribulation and absorbing the heaven and earth yuan qi. A beam of light directly pierced through the glabella of this stage 6 mystic immortal. The remaining stage 6 mystic immortals did not dare to fight. They scattered and fled frantically into the distance. In the blink of an eye, the space between Chen Xianyang and Su Zimo was empty. There was no one blocking them. Their gazes collided with each other. Chen Xuanyang's eyes were filled with deep hatred and killing intent. He glared at Su Zimo and said coldly, Su Zimo, you're finished. You've offended the wolf army, Zuyangu, and you've ruined my plans twice. There's no place for you on this Dragon Abyss planet. Ha! Su Zimo shook his head slightly and chuckled. He looked disdainful and said, I haven't seen you do anything to me in the past 10 years. Chen Xuanyang's expression was ugly as he said hatefully, If I had known, I would have killed you personally 10 years ago. Cut the crap. Su Zimo stepped into the air and quickly approached Chen Xianyang. He said indifferently, Today I'll give you a chance. The other Zuyangu cultivators could not even take care of themselves under the heavenly slaughter and earthly slaughter sword techniques. The stage 6 mystic immortals were completely scared out of their wits by Su Zimo and were fleeing into the distance. There was no one who dared to stop Su Zimo. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already arrived in front of Chen Xianyang. Kill! Chen Xianyang took a deep breath and bit the tip of his tongue lightly. He spat out a stream of blood essence and sprinkled it on the spear in his hand. Immediately after, Chen Xianyang activated his primordial spirit. His qi and blood surged as he crazily spun the spear in his hand. It circled in front of him and formed a blood-red sun. This was a secret technique of the Zuyangu. It could be used for both offense and defense, and it was extremely famous on the Dragon Abyss planet. Just now, the black-clothed youth's long sword was sent flying by Chen Xuanyang's secret technique. Break! Su Zimo was not afraid at all. Facing the monstrous blood qi, the blood qi in his body burst forth, emitting the sound of waves. He exhaled and punched the center of the blood-red sun. Boom! A loud explosion shook the heavens and the earth. A shockwave visible to the naked eye burst out between the two of them. It was like a wave, rapidly spreading in all directions. Many Zuyangu cultivators were caught off guard and were instantly sent flying by this wave of air. The short-haired man, the black-clothed young man, and the others were worried about Su Zimo's situation. They squinted their eyes, ignoring the dust blowing in their faces, and focused their gazes. Chen Xianyang rode on his war horse. The spear in his hands had already stopped spinning, and his eyes were bloodshot. As for Su Zimo, he hovered in midair. His fist was at the center of Chen Xuanyang's spear, and he was motionless as well. It was as though the two of them had stopped moving. The next moment, the war horse beneath Chen Xianyang suddenly let out a tragic cry and blood sprayed out of its nostrils. With a thud, it sprawled on the ground. The power released by Su Zimo's punch was way too ferocious. Although the war horse was covered in armor, its organs were shattered by Su Zimo's punch, and it could not survive. Exclamation point. Immediately after, Chen Xianyang opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was drained of blood and turned pale. Chen Xianyang lost his grip on his spear, and it flew out of his hand and struck Zhang Xian squarely in the chest. Splash! The heart-protecting mirror in front of his chest was shattered by the spear. Chen Xianyang shuddered. Even though he was wearing a treasure armor that blocked most of the power, his organs were still shaken violently. His spear shattered his heart-protecting mirror and was repelled, falling to the ground beside him. The short-haired burly man's gaze instinctively landed on the spear, and his pupils constricted as he gasped. How was that a spear? The middle of the spear was deeply indented. According to what he knew, Chen Xuanyang's mystic dharma treasure was superior grade mystic dharma treasure. A superior grade mystic dharma treasure was bent by a single punch from the green-robed cultivator and was almost crippled. Even if the green-robed cultivator was carrying a mystic dharma treasure, the power released was terrifying enough. The short-haired burly man pondered to himself. If he was in the other party's shoes, he might not be able to receive that punch even if he attacked with all his might. Chen Xinyang spat out blood and leaped down from his dying war horse, retreating. Su Zimo's expression was indifferent as he moved like a shadow. At the same time, he withdrew a talisman from his storage bag and tore it apart without hesitation. The moment the talisman shattered, it burst forth with a strange power. The void around him collapsed and a pitch-black cave appeared. No one knew where it led to. A transference talisman? Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. In the upper realm, space was extremely stable, and even the power of a heaven immortal expert could not shatter the void, let alone tear through the void and teleport away. The transference talismans of the lower realm were useless in the upper realm. Even if it was torn apart, it would not cause any ripples in the void. However, the fact that the transference talisman in Chen Xuanyang's hands could create a spatial tunnel in the upper realm was proof of how precious it was. Su Zimo, no matter where you hide, as long as you're still on the Dragon Abyss planet, I, Xiangu, will definitely seek revenge for today's blood debt. And at the same time that the transference talisman was torn apart, Chen Xuanyang's figure had almost disappeared into the pitch-black spatial tunnel. His voice came from the spatial tunnel, filled with endless hatred. However, Su Zimo's reaction was even faster. The moment Chen Xinyang tore the talisman, he attacked brazenly and grabbed towards Chen Xinyang. Su Zimo's palm entered the pitch-black spatial tunnel and seemed to have grabbed onto something. Su Zimo exerted strength in his fingers, and his sharp fingernails popped out like swords. They pierced through the flesh and pulled towards the outside. Before Chen Xinyang could finish his sentence, he let out a tragic cry. Su Zimo retracted his arm. His palm was still holding onto another arm. On the other end of the arm, blood, flesh and bones were stuck together, and it was a ghastly sight. The black-robed young man's heart skipped a beat. That was Chen Xuanyang's arm. Furthermore, it was torn off by the green-robed cultivator before him. Although Chen Xinyang managed to escape with his life, he lost an arm. To him, it was an irreparable injury. In the upper realm, one could only regrow a severed arm if they cultivated to the Earth Essence realm. However, on the Dragon Abyss planet, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to cultivate to level 8 or level 9 Mystic Essence realm, let alone the Earth Essence realm. That required a massive amount of resources and a long period of accumulation. The various major factions on the Dragon Abyss planet, including the leaders of the 4 bandits, were merely level 8 Mystic Immortals. One could only encounter level 9 Mystic Immortals in Dragon Abyss City. End of chapter. Chapter 1831. At this point, there was no longer any suspense in this battle. The few Stage 6 Mystic Immortals of Xiangu had already fled. The remaining Xiangu cultivators were completely defeated by the heaven and earth slaying sword arts, and were no longer in the mood to fight. Even if Su Zimo did not make a move, the cultivators under the short-haired burly man were enough to wipe out the Xiangu cultivators. The red-robed woman stood motionless in the forest, completely stunned on the spot. From the beginning to the end, before she could make a move, the 5,000-strong army of Xiangu was suppressed by the green-robed cultivator in the distance. And this person was only a Stage 5 Mystic Immortal. When they first saw this person, they looked down on him. At that thought, the red-robed woman smiled bitterly. At that time, they were probably a joke in the eyes of this person. Exalted Immortal, please spare our lives. On the battlefield, some of the Xiangu cultivators could not hold on any longer, and knelt on the ground, kowtowing to Su Zimo, who was standing in the air. When one of them did so, the rest of the Xiangu cultivators followed suit and knelt down. Su Zimo frowned slightly. The nature of the Xiangu cultivators was different from the Evil Wolf Army. The Evil Wolf Army was unpardonable, vicious bandits who killed, burned, and pillaged. On the other hand, although there were many Xiangu cultivators, who helped the evil wolf army. At least they did not fall to the level of bandits. However, if these people were not killed, Su Zimo could not do anything about it. He could not possibly bring this group of people along with him. Benefactor, if you don't know how to deal with this group of Zuyinga cultivators, you can leave it to us, the short-haired burly man said with a pale face, looking a little weak. How are you going to deal with them? Su Zimo asked in return. The short-haired man said, we know of a sealing technique. As long as we take away the storage pouches of these cultivators, seal their cultivation base at the first layer of Arcane Aeon Realm, and send someone to guard them, they can be used as spiritual farmers to grow immortal herbs. Su Zimo nodded slightly and moved his mind. The sword Qi, the divine dragon in the sky, and the soaring serpent bathed in fire suddenly froze in midair. This scene was like a miracle. The many Zuyinga cultivators who were still wailing were so frightened that their faces turned pale. They all fell silent and did not even dare to breathe loudly. The black-clothed youth came to the short-haired man's side and helped him up from the ground. As for the others, under the guidance of the red-robed woman, they began to collect the storage pouches of the Zuyinga cultivators. Furthermore, he used an immortal technique to seal the cultivation of this group of people. No one from Zuyinga dared to resist. Although the white sword energy and the dragons and snakes condensed from the sword energy were still, they did not dissipate. They were still floating above their heads. If they made any strange movements, the sword energy would descend and kill them. In this battle, Zuyinga lost nearly 3,000 men. There were more than 1,000 who surrendered and begged for mercy, including Chen Xinyang. There were less than 1,000 Zuyinga cultivators who managed to escape. Su Zimo moved his spirit consciousness and took 3 storage pouches from the corpses. Those 3 storage pouches belonged to the 3 level 7 mystic immortals of the Shadowless Assassin. Be careful, benefactor. When the short-haired man saw that, he seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly reminded, there's poison on that old witch's storage pouch. The short-haired man was pointing at a silver-white storage pouch that emitted a pungent fragrance. It's fine. Su Zimo smiled faintly and picked up the storage pouch. He erased the spirit consciousness imprint on it and opened it to take a look. There were many bottles and jars in the storage pouch. Other than some elixirs that were required for cultivation, there were also medicine bottles that were filled with toxic substances. Su Zimo searched carefully and took out a medicine bottle. He poured out an elixir and sniffed it before nodding. This should be it. Su Zimo handed the elixir to the short-haired man. Eat it. It should be able to purge the poison in your body. The short-haired man was extremely forthright as well. Without hesitation, he received the elixir from Su Zimo and swallowed it. A look of admiration flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. Bro, don't. The moment the black-robed young man at the side spoke, the elixir had already entered his stomach. Don't worry, the short-haired man smiled. Benefactor won't harm me. The black-robed young man glanced at Su Zimo and muttered softly, even so, what if he chose the wrong elixir? It's fine. The short-haired man waved it off nonchalantly. On the other hand, the black-robed young man was extremely nervous as he guarded beside the short-haired man, afraid that something might happen. Not long after the short-haired man swallowed the elixir, his face gradually regained its color, and his aura returned to normal as he became even more spirited. The black-robed young man heaved a sigh of relief and smiled apologetically to Su Zimo, cupping his fists. Benefactor, just now I'm sorry. Su Zimo shook his head gently. He would not take such a small matter to heart. In this short period of time, the red-robed woman had already sealed more than 1,000 Zuyinga cultivators with her subordinates and cleaned up the battlefield as well. The red-robed woman walked over and handed all the dermic treasures, weapons and storage bags collected from the battlefield to Su Zimo. Benefactor, these are the treasures obtained from this battle. Please take a look. The red-robed woman looked at Su Zimo with a strange, curious, respectful and inexplicable luster in her eyes. Su Zimo nodded to himself. Although the 3 of them were doing things for the sake of the calamity, they were very principled. With so many spoils of war and storage bags, there were countless cultivation resources and dermic treasures and weapons within. However, the red-robed woman, did not even open a single storage bag. Without even taking a look, she handed them to Su Zimo without touching them. Although the black-robed young man's eyes flashed with envy, he did not say anything. The short-haired burly man was even more indifferent. Su Zimo did not decline, and took over the storage bags from the red-robed woman's hands, keeping all of them. These were things that he deserved to have in the first place. Benefactor. After purging the poison from his body, the short-haired burly man looked like he had recovered, and knelt down towards Su Zimo. At the same time, the short-haired burly man looked at the black-robed young man and red-robed woman beside him. Second brother, little sister, come and greet our benefactor. Right from the start, it was clear that the black-robed young man was an extremely prideful person. However, he merely hesitated for a moment before kneeling down with the short-haired burly man and red-robed woman. There's no need for that, the three of you. Su Zimo extended his palm and lifted the short-haired burly man's arms. Initially, the short-haired burly man was determined to kneel down. However, when Su Zimo lifted him, he stood up uncontrollably. End of chapter. Chapter 1832. Benefactor, your strength is so great. Yu Hao was slightly stunned and said, I'm a body refiner myself, and my cultivation is even 2 realms higher than yours, yet I'm actually still slightly unable to resist it. Su Zimo smiled and didn't explain, and then he lightly flicked his sleeve to bring the black-clothed young man and red-clothed young woman up as well. The black-clothed young man cupped his fists to Su Zimo and said, Benefactor, I take back what I said at the beginning. Your ability is sufficient to arrive at Dragon Lake City. I'm Su Zimo, and we can just address each other as fellow Taoist. Su Zimo asked, May I know how to address the three of you? I'm Yu Hao. The short-haired man pointed at the black-clothed young man at his side and said, This is Shen Fei, and that's Gu Wenjun. The three of us are sworn siblings. The red-clothed young woman called Gu Wenjun lowered her head slightly and frowned as she pondered. And then she said in a light voice, Su Zimo, this name sounds slightly familiar. I seem to have seen it somewhere before. Shen Fei said, Now that I think about it, we felt fellow Taoist Su was slightly familiar at first glance as well. Oh, Su Zimo's brows raised slightly. He'd only arrived at Dragon Lake Star for less than 10 years. And besides staying at Snowwind Ridge for a year, he'd always been in seclusion in the wilds. So he'd absolutely never seen these three people before him. Right at this moment, Gu Wenjun cried out lightly and said, I know. She raised her head and looked at Su Zimo with eyes that revealed a wisp of shock. Fellow Taoist, what did you think of? Su Zimo asked. Gu Wenjun took a deep breath and said, Fellow Taoist Su, you might not know, but during these 10 years, the Wolf Army has already issued a bounty on your head. Merely the information about you is worth 10,000 origin condensation pills. Your life is even worth 100,000 origin condensation pills. Yu Hao and Shen Fei revealed expressions of sudden understanding as well, and they recalled where they'd seen Su Zimo. In Dragon Lake City, the three of them had once seen a portrait of Su Zimo. Of course, that portrait was only a likeness. It didn't depict even 1/10,000th of the real person's aura. That was why the three of them couldn't recall it immediately. Back then, the evil wolf army was completely wiped out. Only Zuyingu could provide this portrait. How did fellow Taoist Su become enemies with the vicious wolf army? Shen Fei asked curiously. After pondering for a while, Su Zimo told him about how he had robbed the people of Wind Snow Ridge 10 years ago. Moreover, he also told him everything he had heard about the collusion between Zuyingu Chen Xianyang and the wolf army. Yu Hao clenched his fist slightly and said, Fellow Taoist Su, actually, it's not just Chen Xianyang. The entire Zuyingu has always been in cahoots with the evil wolf army. Following that, Yu Hao recounted some past events. Actually, Su Zimo had also heard about this from Xia Qingying. Back then, there were 3 major forces on Long Yuan planet that wanted to join forces to destroy the evil wolf army. These 3 forces were Sky Pillar Stronghold Wind Cloud Gang and Righteous Mountain Village. However, the news was leaked later. Although the evil wolf army was defeated, the leader of the evil wolf army survived and escaped death. After this calamity, the leader's cultivation increased greatly. Not long after, the first master made a comeback, and the evil wolf army also rose from the ashes. Then, the evil wolf army launched a crazy revenge on the three forces. At that time, the Goshawk gang, 2 of the 4 bandits, also joined forces with the evil wolf army. Normally, even if the 2 bandits joined forces, it would be difficult for them to destroy the 3 forces. Unexpectedly, the protector of Sky Pillar Stronghold betrayed them and ambushed and killed the leader of Sky Pillar Stronghold. Then, he faked the order of the leader of Sky Pillar Stronghold and invited the leader of Windcloud Gang and Righteous Mountain Village over to set up an ambush. The leader of Windcloud Gang and Righteous Mountain Village also died in this battle. With the leaders of the 3 factions dying one after another, the morale of the 3 factions was in chaos, and they were reduced to scattered sand. Under such circumstances, the protector of Sky Pillar Stronghold worked together with the evil wolf army and Goshawk gang, and destroyed the 3 factions before long. In that battle, blood flowed like rivers and flames burned everywhere. Wails could be heard everywhere, and countless cultivators died. Countless women were abducted by the evil wolf army and Goshawk gang with tragic endings. At the mention of this, Yu Hao's voice turned heavier. Shen Fei and Gu Wenjun's eyes were bloodshot as well, with deep hatred in their eyes. The hundreds of cultivators under the 3 of them gathered around them. As though they had recalled something, all of them had sorrowful expressions. Su Zimo was silent. Duan Tianliang asked, "What happened after that?" Shen Fei laughed mockingly and continued. Later on, the protector of Sky Pillar Stronghold established a new faction on the ruins, which is the current Zuyingu. That traitorous protector is the current Zuyinga Valley Master. This was the first time many Zuyinga cultivators heard of this, and they were all shocked. This was completely different from what they knew. Gu Wenjun said, "After all these years, apart from those who escaped back then, not many people remember that bloody battle, or know the truth of what happened back then." Su Zimo said, "The 3 of you are the descendants of the leaders of Sky Pillar Stronghold, Windcloud Gang and Righteous Mountain Village, right?" "No." Yu Hao shook his head. "Indeed, I was from Sky Pillar Stronghold. My second brother was from Windcloud Gang, and my younger sister was from Righteous Mountain Village. However, we are not the descendants of the 3 leaders. In that battle, the descendants of the 3 leaders were all killed by the Wolf Army, the Goshawk Gang, and the Valley Master of the Blood Sun Valley. We are just the lucky survivors of the 3 factions. We want the Zuyinga Valley Master, the Evil Wolf Army, and the Goshawk Gang to pay with their blood." Duan Tianliang said, "No wonder you wanted to ambush Zuyingu. It turns out that you have such a deep grudge." Yu Hao said, "Fellow Taoist Su, although we are considered bandits, we have never been stronger than other cultivators or other factions. We are only enemies with Zuyingu, the Evil Wolf Army and the Goshawk Gang." Su Zimo nodded. This could be seen from the fact that these people did not attack him at the beginning. Moreover, even if Yu Hao suspected Su Zimo, he did not kill him immediately. Instead, he guarded Su Zimo. After the battle broke out and seeing that the situation was not right, Gu Wenjun even let them go and let them escape. All the signs showed that these people were completely different from the Evil Wolf Army and Zuyingu. Su Zimo asked, "Are these all you have?" "Of course not." Yu Hao said, "We also have a stronghold called the Annihilation Stronghold. Most of the people are planting immortal herbs in the stronghold. However, we will move once every 100 years to prevent being targeted by the Evil Wolf Army." Shen Fei said, "Fellow Taoist Su, you might not know, but all these years, Zuyingu has been working with the Evil Wolf Army. When they head to Dragon Lake City, the Evil Wolf Army will not attack their caravan. The 2 families will split the essence condensing pills equally. As long as it is not a caravan from Zuyingu, the Evil Wolf Army will massacre and loot crazily. No one can reach Dragon Lake City alive. As a result, the forces near Zuyingu can only go to Zuyingu to exchange for essence condensing pills." Su Zimo nodded. Wind Snow Ridge was one of these forces. Chapter 1833. In Zuyingu, 100 stalks of essence nurturing grass and rain flower could only be exchanged for one essence condensing pill. However, Feng Shuling had no choice but to exchange for it in Zuyingu. This road to Dragon Lake City had already been blocked off by the joint forces of Zuyingu and the Wolf Army, not to mention 100 stalks of immortal herbs for one elixir. Even if it was 1,000 stalks of immortal herbs for one elixir, the other forces could only endure it. Fellow Taoist Su, have you been to Dragon Lake City? Yu Hao asked. Su Zimo shook his head. Yu Hao said, if fellow Taoist Su doesn't mind, the three of us are willing to go with you to Dragon Lake City to take a look. We can also lead the way for you. Don't you have to deal with these captives? Su Zimo looked at the 1,000 over Zuyinga cultivators that had surrendered. Shen Fei said, fellow Taoist, there's no need to worry. These captives have their cultivations sealed. With hundreds of us guarding them, there'll definitely be no accidents. That's good as well. Su Zimo nodded. No matter if it was him or Duan Tianliang, they weren't familiar with Dragon Lake City. It wasn't bad to have Yu Hao and the other two as guides. Yu Hao instructed the few cultivators behind him to escort the captives of Zuyinga back to the Annihilation Stronghold before setting off with Su Zimo and the others towards Dragon Lake City. At the same time, Zuyingu, in the courtyard of Chen Xuanyang's mansion, the void collapsed and a dark and deep spatial tunnel appeared. A figure that was covered in blood fell out from within with disheveled hair and a broken arm. Many of the servants in the mansion were shocked. Who's there? Trespassing into Zuyingu. Someone shouted sternly. Quickly go call my father. The figure that was covered in blood struggled to raise his head and groaned. Everyone focused their gazes, and their expressions changed drastically. Eldest young master! Young master! Everyone hurriedly swarmed forward and helped Chen Xianyang up. This movement touched the wound on Chen Xuanyang's broken arm. Chen Xuanyang's face turned even paler. He was in so much pain that his whole body was trembling. He growled, "Go and get my father." A servant hurriedly retreated and ran outside. Not long after, a middle-aged man in blood-red armor strode over. His face was gloomy and dignified. The middle-aged man was the current Valley Master of Zuyingu. Behind him were two old men. They were Zuyinga's Dharma protectors. When the Zuyinga Valley Master saw Chen Xuanyang's expression, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes. The atmosphere in the entire residence became extremely oppressive. The air seemed to have solidified. Xianyang, what's going on? Zuyinga Valley Master said slowly with a cold voice. Father. Chen Xianyang took a few steps forward and fell to his knees in front of Zuyinga Valley Master with a thud. He said sorrowfully, "Someone tore off my arm. Father, you must seek justice for me and avenge me." Zuyinga Valley Master took out an elixir from his storage bag and fed it to Chen Xianyang. Chen Xuanyang's face regained some color. The wound on his broken arm also showed signs of clotting. However, the excruciating pain from the wound was still excruciating. "Tell me slowly, what happened?" Zuyinga Valley Master asked in a low voice. "Didn't you have Shadowless and the other two by your side? How did the remnants of Sky Pillar Stronghold hurt you?" "Father, Shadowless and the other two are all dead," Chen Xianyang said. "What?" Zuyinga Valley Master was shocked. 3 Stage 7 Mystic Immortals. In Zuyinga they were guardians. Even in the entire Dragon Abyss planet, they were not to be underestimated. The death of 3 Stage 7 Mystic Immortals was not a small loss to Zuyingu. Chen Xianyang laughed bitterly and said, "I don't think many of the 5,000 soldiers survived this time. I tore the teleportation talisman that you gave me to escape alive." Bang! Zuyinga Valley Master was furious when he heard this. In a fit of rage, he directly smashed the skull of a servant beside Chen Xianyang into pieces. Although this servant was also a Stage 3 Mystic Immortal, Zuyinga Valley Master took his anger out on him and killed him on the spot. The other servants were so scared that their faces turned pale. They all knelt on the ground and trembled. Zuyingu was indeed one of the 8 major forces of Dragon Abyss planet. There were tens of thousands of soldiers stationed in the valley. But even then, losing 5,000 members and 3 7th-rank mysterious immortals was still an enormous loss to Blood Sun Valley that was impossible to accept. "Valley Master, please calm down. Let's listen to what the young master has to say." The old man on the left side of Xinga Valley Master lowered his head slightly and advised in a low voice. These two old men were Xinga's left and right guardians. Their cultivation was at the peak of Stage 7 Mystic Aeon Realm, and their combat strength was second only to Xinga Valley Master. It's Su Zimo. The figure of the green-robed cultivator flashed across Chen Xuanyang's mind. He gritted his teeth and said, Shadowless and the other two were assassinated by Su Zimo. If this person had not suddenly appeared, the remnants of Sky Pillar Stronghold would have been wiped out by me. Who's Su Zimo? Xinga Valley Master frowned slightly and asked, Who is this person? Why haven't I heard of him? Xinga Valley Master did not take the incident 10 years ago to heart at all. Naturally, he would not care about a stage for Mystic Immortal. The left guardian thought for a while and asked, Is he the person who annihilated 500 soldiers of the Vicious Wolf Army 10 years ago? That's him, Chen Xinyang said with hatred. The right guardian frowned slightly and said, So it's him. I have some impression of him. A few years ago, the Vicious Wolf Army issued a bounty for his head, but they could not find his whereabouts. I didn't expect him to appear again. That's not right. The left guardian suddenly asked. 10 years ago, this person was only a stage for Mystic Immortal. In just 10 years, he broke through 3 realms and cultivated to Stage 7 Mystic Immortal? No, Chen Xinyang hurriedly said. He's only a Stage 5 Mystic Immortal. He was able to kill Shadowless and the others because of sneak attacks and some strange methods. Breaking through to Stage 5 Mystic Aeon in 10 years. This speed is terrifying enough. The right guardian said softly. The left guardian nodded and said, No matter what method he used, to be able to cross 2 realms and kill 3 Stage 7 Mystic Immortals, this person is not simple. Chen Xinyang said sorrowfully, Father, this arm of mine was torn off by this Su Zimo. If it wasn't for my quick reaction, I wouldn't be able to see you now. Father, I want to kill him. I want him to pay for this with his blood. Xinga Valley Master pondered for a long time before he said slowly, Send this news to the Vicious Wolf Army. The left guardian's eyes lit up and said, Valley Master is wise. With the methods of the Vicious Wolf Army, they will definitely frantically search for this person's whereabouts after receiving this news. Even if we don't make an appearance, this person will die without a doubt. Xinga continued. Besides that, Guardian Shui, make a trip to Dragon Lake City yourself. This person obtained numerous spoils and treasures from the battle, and it's extremely likely that he's heading to Dragon Lake City. If the Vicious Wolf Army is unable to kill this person, then bring his head to me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1834. Su Zimo rode on Big Yellow and headed towards Dragon Lake City with Yu Hao, Shen Fei and Gu Wenjun. Along the way, Su Zimo roughly looked at the rewards he obtained from killing the Xinga cultivators, and was secretly delighted. There were more than 3,000 mystic-grade Dharma treasures in these storage bags. All the origin solidifying pills in the storage pouches were collected together. There were about 120,000 of them. Su Zimo even found 13 essence spirit stones in the storage bags of the Shadowless Assassin, and the other 2 rank 7 Mystic Immortals. He found out from Yu Hao and the other 2 that a single essence spirit stone could be exchanged for 100,000 essence gathering pills on Dragon Lake Planet. The rewards this time were huge. Even if he did not go to Dragon Lake Planet to exchange for essence gathering pills, just these 120,000 essence gathering pills were enough for Su Zimo to cultivate for a period of time. Of course, Su Zimo did not change his plan, and still planned to go to Dragon Lake City to take a look. It was a pity that Chen Xinyang had managed to escape. There were definitely more treasures and cultivation resources in Chen Xuanyang's storage bag. The immortal herbs that Xinga transported this time were all in Chen Xuanyang's storage bag. It was a pity that Su Zimo could not snatch them away. Along the way, Su Zimo found out a lot of things about the upper realm from Yu Hao and the other 2. According to Yu Hao, Dragon Lake Planet belonged to Azure Cloud County. On the other hand, Cyan Cloud County was a county under Dajin. Within the jurisdiction of Azure Cloud County, there were more than 100 cities like Dragon Lake City. Dragon Lake City alone ruled the entire Dragon Lake planet. One could imagine how vast the area ruled by more than 100 cities was. And these hundreds of cities were only part of the Cyan Cloud County. Just this Azure Cloud County alone was many times larger than Tianhuang mainland. It was hard to imagine the scale of the entire Great Gene. And Great Gene was in the distance of the starry sky, above that gigantic shadow. According to Yu Hao, that shadow was a boundless continent. What they could see while standing on the Dragon Abyss planet was only the tip of the iceberg. The Great Gene nation was on that continent. Gu Wenjun said, "Basically, all the cultivators on this Dragon Abyss planet want to leave this place and set foot on that land. I heard that in the other cities of Dajin and Cyan Cloud County, the essence chi of heaven and earth is many times denser than here. Cultivation speed is also much faster there." Su Zimo asked, "What kind of conditions do you need to leave the Dragon Abyss planet?" The Dragon Abyss star and the Great Gene nation were separated by 10,000 miles of the Milky Way. Only celestial immortal experts could traverse the galaxy. But Xia Qingying had once told him that there was a teleportation formation in Dragon Lake City that could directly teleport cultivators to the continent at the end of the starry sky. Yu Hao said, "There are two ways to leave the Dragon Abyss planet. The first is to reach the 9th level of the Mystic Origin stage. After you become a 9th-rank mysterious immortal, you can head to the city governor's estate in Dragon Lake City. At that time, someone will naturally teleport you to the Grand Gene Empire." Su Zimo nodded. Presently, it would seem that a 9th-level mysterious immortal was already the top expert on Dragon Abyss Star. Just now, Yu Hao had said that the city governor of Dragon Lake City was a 9th-rank mysterious immortal. However, wanting to cultivate to the 9th-rank mysterious immortal stage on the Dragon Abyss planet that was lacking in essence chi of heaven and earth and scarce in cultivation resources was simply as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Yu Hao continued. The second method is to spend 100 elemental spirit stones. 100 elemental spirit stones. Su Zimo frowned slightly. After all, 10,000 essence condensation pills could only be exchanged for 1 elemental spirit stone. 100 elemental spirit stones were equivalent to 1 million essence condensation pills. And to an ordinary cultivator, how could they possibly possess so many essence condensation pills? Most importantly, essence condensation pills were essential cultivation resources for mysterious immortals. If a cultivator wanted to increase their cultivation as soon as possible, they had to consume essence condensation pills. In this way, it was practically impossible to accumulate 1 million essence condensation pills. Su Zimo had only obtained 120,000 essence condensation pills, which were equivalent to 12 elemental spirit stones, from annihilating the Zuingo army that was almost 5,000 strong. Coupled with the 13 elemental spirit stones, it was only 25 essence condensation pills. Su Zimo said, "This second method isn't much inferior to the first method, and it's extremely difficult to accomplish for ordinary cultivators." Fellow Taoist is right. Yu Hao laughed bitterly. Only a great power like the Zuyanggu on the Dragon Abyss planet would be able to accumulate 100 elemental spirit stones through the accumulation of countless years. Ordinary cultivators like us have no hope in our entire lifetimes. Everyone traveled day and night, and after around half a month, they finally arrived at Dragon Lake City. As they gazed at this city from afar, it was like an enormous ancient ferocious beast, and its enormous figure stood towering on the horizon, causing it to be extremely shocking. Not long after, Su Zimo and the others had already arrived before the city. The city walls of this ancient city were around 30 m tall, and they were formed from enormous limestone that was covered in mottled traces of time. Shin Fei said, "On this Dragon Lake star, a height of 30 m is the limit that mysterious immortals can soar into the sky. So the city walls of Dragon Lake City were built to be 30 m tall. In the higher dimensions, not only was space stable and the ground hard, even the gravitational force emitted by the ground was extremely strong. Even though mysterious immortals were able to soar into the sky, they were unable to fly too high. Moreover, The consumption of energy within their bodies was extremely intense. Even if it was a level 9 mysterious immortal, the highest they could soar was a height of 30 m. In this way, if the cultivators on Dragon Lake Star wanted to enter the city, they could only pass through the city gate, that was enormous like the mouth of a ferocious beast. On both sides of the city gate stood over 10 guards with sabers hanging from their waists, and all of them had cold expressions, as they stopped everyone that entered the city and questioned them. These guards had various cultivations, and most of them were level 6 mysterious immortals, and there were even 2 level 7 mysterious immortals. Yu Hao said, "If you want to enter the city, then everyone must first pay 1,000 origin condensation pills, and these guards will give us a command token every other day. With this command token in hand, you can stay in Dragon Lake City for a day. After a day, this command token will vanish. If you want to continue staying in Dragon Lake City, then you have to pay another 1,000 origin condensation pills. Otherwise, you'll be kicked out by the guards of Dragon Lake City." What a fellow! Staying in Dragon Lake City for a day requires 1,000 origin condensation pills. Duan Tianliang muttered. This is daylight robbery. Everyone stood in the distance and hadn't arrived at the city gate. But Duan Tianliang's words were heard by a guard at the city gate. This guard glanced coldly towards them with an icy cold expression. Duan Tianliang was shocked and shrunk his neck. Su Zimo took a deep breath and said, "Let's go enter the city." "All right." Yu Hao and the others agreed. Su Zimo said, "All of you came here with me this time, so I'll pay the origin condensation pills for all of you to enter the city this time." Su Zimo's gains from annihilating the Zuyango army this time were rather plentiful, and he'd obtained a great deal of useful information from Yu Hao's group of 3, so these origin condensation pills ought to be paid by him. Yu Hao's group of 3 was slightly hesitant, and was just about to decline. Su Zimo had already taken out some origin condensation pills from his storage pouch, and passed them to the guard at the city gate. End of chapter. Chapter 1835. Su Zimo had a total of 5 people on this trip, so he had to take out 5,000 origin condensation pills. Su Zimo passed over the storage pouch that contained the origin condensation pills, and at the same time, he sent a voice transmission with his divine sense. "Exalted Immortal, please make an exception. There are 6,000 origin condensation pills inside." Just now, it was extremely likely that this guard would come to make things difficult for them, after hearing Duan Tianliang's complaints. Su Zimo didn't want to become enemies with these Dragon Lake City guards, and come into conflict with them. Presently, entering the city smoothly was the most important to him. This guard originally wanted to make things difficult for Su Zimo's group, but he suddenly heard Su Zimo's voice transmission, and his expression eased up slightly as he nodded to Su Zimo and said, "Little cultivator, you're rather tactful." This person didn't say anything and condensed 5 command tokens with an immortal art. Then he passed them to Su Zimo and said, "You're only allowed to stay in Dragon Lake City for a day, go on in." Su Zimo received the command tokens, and expressed his thanks before entering Dragon Lake City, with Yu Hao and the others. Compared to the desolation outside the city, Dragon Lake City was extremely bustling. Su Zimo's group had just entered the city, when they saw many cultivators setting up stalls on both sides of the road, and loudly hawking their wares. Talismans, magic treasures, cultivation techniques, and various other things were sold. Everywhere their gazes passed, they were able to see cultivators of all shapes and sizes. This enormous city was actually filled with a sea of people, and it was extraordinarily bustling. In the entire Dragon Lake Star, there's only this one true city. The numerous cultivators on Dragon Lake Star are like going to a market, and they'll try their best to gather here. Yu Hao said amidst the clamorous noise. Here, origin condensation pills are considered to be the currency in circulation. If you want to buy something, you can exchange it with origin condensation pills. Gu Wenjun said, "Fighting and killing is prohibited in Dragon Lake City. Once someone attacks, the city guards will immediately arrive and expel the cultivator. If the situation is serious, The city guards might even make a move and kill the cultivator on the spot. Shenfei continued. If you want to fight, wait until the veil of night descends, and there'll be a dark night market in Dragon Lake City. After pausing for a while, Shenfei winked at Su Zimo and said with a strange smile, everything is there. I heard that there are also some beauties. Cough cough. Gu Wenjun's face sank. She coughed lightly and said in a deep voice, let's talk business. Shenfei hurriedly put away his smile and said seriously, in the Dark Night House, there will be an auction. There would be many rare and precious treasures at the auction. Once the auction is over, an arena will be set up. As long as both sides agree to it, they can enter the arena and fight to the death, regardless of life or death. Su Zimo frowned slightly and asked, Dragon Lake City doesn't care about this Dark Night workshop. Don't care. Yu Hao shook his head and said, I heard that many guards and exalted immortals of Dragon Lake City would occasionally go to the Eventide workshop to relax. Su Zimo nodded and chatted with Yu Hao and the others as they walked. His gaze was casually looking at the stalls on both sides of the road. Suddenly, Su Zimo's gaze squinted as his footsteps stopped before a stall, and then he squatted down and looked over. Yu Hao and the others were watching from the side as well. This stall owner was a middle-aged man, and there were some talismans, a few magic treasures, spirit pills, and even some rocks and minerals placed on the stall. Fellow Taoist, what have you taken a fancy to? Su Zimo picked up a low-grade profound rank magic treasure and looked at it carefully, and he seemed to be rather fond of it. After looking at it for a short while, Su Zimo asked, Fellow Taoist, how much is this magic treasure? Even though this sword is low-grade profound rank, it's extremely sharp, and it's a high-grade profound rank magic treasure. The middle-aged stall owner said, This sword is at least 20,000 origin condensation pills. You're really asking for an exorbitant price. The nearby Shenfei couldn't continue listening and he sneered. The price of a low-grade profound rank magic treasure is 10,000 origin condensation pills. Stop bluffing. Do you really think we don't know the market price? This sword of mine is different. The middle-aged stall owner's face flushed red when his thoughts were exposed. However, he still braced himself and argued. Su Zimo shook his head gently and pretended to be troubled as he sighed. 20,000 origin condensation pills is truly a little expensive. Thereafter, Su Zimo put down the sword and looked at other things. His palm seemed to be casually rummaging, but suddenly, he picked up a tortoiseshell the size of a face and asked with a frown, Fellow Taoist, what is this? Ah. The middle-aged stall owner glanced at it and said, This tortoiseshell has an extraordinary origin. I chanced upon it in an ancient ruin. Stop bragging, Shenfei sneered. So, all of your items have such a great background. Su Zimo frowned. Why isn't there any reaction from this tortoiseshell after I injected heaven and earth essence chi into it? What's the use of this thing? Fellow Taoist, you don't know, the middle-aged stall owner said. If the secrets of such a miraculous item can be discovered casually, it would be worthless. You have to buy such a treasure and study it carefully before you can comprehend its mysteries. Oh. Su Zimo smiled and asked in a seemingly casual manner, How much is this tortoiseshell? Just as the middle-aged stall owner was about to speak, he rolled his eyes and said, If you buy that sword for 20,000 origin condensation pills, I'll give this tortoiseshell to you as a gift. Brother Su, let's go. When Yu Hao saw that Su Zimo was about to fall for it, he did not care too much and addressed him as brother before pulling Su Zimo away. Unexpectedly, Su Zimo took out a storage bag and threw it in front of the middle-aged stall owner. 20,000 origin condensation pills. I'll buy it. The middle-aged stall owner was stunned and could not believe it. He opened the storage bag and took a look. Indeed, there were 20,000 origin condensation pills. He had picked up the tortoiseshell casually, and it was completely useless. The price of that longsword was around 10,000 soul condensing pills. To think that this delicate-looking cultivator before him would be so easily fooled to spend 20,000 origin condensation pills on an inferior-grade mystic-grade dermic treasure. At that thought, the middle-aged stall owner put away the 20,000 origin condensation pills hurriedly and threw the sword and tortoiseshell to Su Zimo. He was afraid that Su Zimo would go back on his words. Ugh! When they saw that, Yu Hao and the other two exchanged glances, and could only sigh helplessly. Now that both parties had lost their money, it was useless even if they wanted to persuade them. Hold on. Right then, a feminine voice sounded from not far away. Immediately after, a young man barged over and reached out, grabbing the tortoiseshell that was thrown towards Su Zimo in midair. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and extended his hand, tapping gently on the young man's wrist. Su Zimo's finger was no different from a divine weapon. Realizing how powerful it was, the young man retracted his hand hurriedly. Su Zimo kept the tortoiseshell in his storage bag and glared at the young man coldly. End of chapter. Chapter 1836. The fight between Su Zimo and the young man was extremely short. They had separated before they even came into contact. Although it attracted the attention of many, it did not cause too much of a commotion. Yu Hao and company looked at the young man opposite them and were alarmed. Their expressions changed slightly. Taoist Su, this is the young master of Mystic Yin Mountain Dingyu. Be careful. Yu Hao hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Su Zimo to warn him. Mystic Yin Mountain was one of the 8 major factions on the Dragon Abyss planet. It was as famous as Zuyanggu. Dingyu's cultivation was at the 6th level of the Mystic Yin realm, but he was guarded by a rank 7 Mystic Immortal. That person looked at Su Zimo with an unfriendly expression. Behind the two of them were more than a dozen rank 5 and rank 6 Mystic Immortal guards from Mystic Yin Mountain. Shen Fei also secretly sent a voice transmission. This person is not to be trifled with. It's best to avoid conflict with him. Beside Dingyu stood a young woman. She had fair skin, and her eyes flickered with a divine light. She had an otherworldly aura and a radiant face. Although this young woman was a rank 6 Mystic Immortal, she stood beside Dingyu. Be it her aura or status, she seemed to be different from the guards of Mystic Yin Mountain. Behind this young woman stood an old man. He was also a rank 7 Mystic Immortal with a lowered head and an expressionless face. Gu Wenjun's gaze swept across the young woman's waist and froze slightly. That woman might be from Heavenfire Hall. Gu Wenjun secretly sent a voice transmission. Furthermore, from the looks of it, this woman has a very high status in Heavenfire Hall. She actually has a rank 7 Mystic Immortal as a guard. Heavenfire Hall, like Mystic Yin Mountain and Zuyanggu, was one of the 8 major factions. You don't recognize me? Dingyu's expression was cold as he stared at Su Zimo and asked faintly. Su Zimo said indifferently, Mystic Yin Mountain's young master. I've just heard of your great name. Very good. Dingyu nodded and said, in that case, hand over the tortoiseshell. Don't worry, Dingyu will definitely not let you suffer. Just now, you bought a low-grade profound rank sword and a tortoiseshell for 20,000 condensing pills. Dingyu took out a storage bag and said, there are 40,000 essence condensation pills in this storage bag. I don't want that mystic low-grade sword. I only want that tortoiseshell. With that, Dingyu casually tossed the storage pouch to Su Zimo. Su Zimo's expression didn't change. He leaned slightly to the side and avoided the attack. This storage bag containing 40,000 essence condensation pills fell directly to the ground. Dingyu's face darkened as he narrowed his eyes and asked, what do you mean? Nothing. Su Zimo said. I don't want to sell this turtle shell. Dingyu's gaze was cold as he said frostily, Brat, I think you're courting death. At this moment, the young woman beside Dingyu took a step forward and cupped her fists at Su Zimo. She said, fellow Taoist, I'm Jiang Li from the Heavenfire Hall. May I know how much you are willing to sell this tortoiseshell? Jiang Li? So it's her. No wonder she has such an aura. Who is she? The daughter of the Heavenfire Hall's Hall Master. Although she's a woman, I heard that she has inherited the Heavenfire Hall's Hall Master's true teachings and has never tasted defeat at the Mystic Origin Realm Level 6. Discussions could be heard from the crowd. Little Li, don't say anything to him. Don't worry, I'll definitely get this tortoiseshell for you, Dingyu said in a deep voice. Su Zimo ignored Dingyu and said to Jiang Li, sorry, I'll say the same thing. I don't want to sell this tortoiseshell. A look of disappointment flashed through Jiang Li's eyes, but she did not insist. At this moment, a group of Dragon Lake City guards walked over from not far away. They were clad in armor and wielded spears with cold expressions. These guards opened a path with their spears, instantly splitting the crowd apart. Who's causing trouble? The leader had a stern expression and sharp gaze. He looked at Su Zimo, Ding Yu and the rest and asked slowly. Su Zimo scanned with his spirit consciousness and realized that the leader of the guards had a cultivation at the Mystic Origin Realm level 8. So it's Commander Lu. When Ding Yu saw this person, the arrogance he had just now vanished instantly. He immediately revealed a flattering smile and went forward to bow. I'm Ding Yu. Greetings, Commander Lu. It's been a long time. Please accept this small gift, Commander Lu. As he said that, Ding Yu took out a storage bag and handed it over. Commander Lu received it naturally and opened the storage bag to take a look. He nodded with a satisfied expression and kept it with a flip of his palm. Su Zimo frowned slightly. This commander of Dragon Lake City actually accepted the gift that Ding Yu handed over in front of everyone without caring about the gazes of others. The surrounding cultivators were even calmer, as though they were already used to this scene. Fellow Taoist Su, please don't become enemies with the guards of Dragon Lake City. When Yu Hao saw that Su Zimo's expression was off, he hurriedly sent a voice transmission to remind him. Although Dragon Lake City is a remote city under the jurisdiction of Azure Cloud County, it belongs to the Dajin Immortal Kingdom, and we can't afford to offend it. Many of these guard commanders are native exalted immortals. In their eyes, our lives are like ants that can be crushed to death at will. Su Zimo was expressionless. Even if Yu Hao did not remind him, he would not offend Commander Lu. On one hand, Commander Lu's cultivation had reached the Mystic Origin Realm level 8. On the other hand, this was Dragon Lake City. Becoming enemies with the guard commanders of Dragon Lake City here was completely courting death. Even with his capabilities, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed. Commander Lu accepted Ding Yu's storage bag and asked with a relaxed expression, "What's going on here?" Ding Yu smiled hurriedly. "Commander Lu, it's just a small matter. Transactions in the city are based on first come, first served. Initially, I took a liking to an item first. To think that this blind thing would buy that item first, when I wasn't paying attention. Fellow Taoist, you're distorting the truth." Yu Hao stood out and said in a deep voice, "You weren't here when we were conversing with this stall owner." "Is that so? Why don't you ask this stall owner who came first?" Ding Yu sneered and turned to look at the middle-aged stall owner with a threatening gaze. The middle-aged stall owner lamented internally. He knew that Su Zimo and the others were the ones who bought it first. However, the situation was pressing, and Ding Yu had the support of Commander Lu. As such, he did not dare to speak the truth, and could only stammer with a troubled expression. Suddenly Commander Lu said, "All right, this isn't a big deal. If you guys insist on your opinions, you can go to Tenebrous Night Workshop to fight. That's fair for all of you." A commotion broke out in the crowd. Although Commander Lu said that it was fair on the surface, it was a fight to the death in Tenebrous Night Workshop. Furthermore, Su Zimo's cultivation was at the Mystic Origin Realm level 5. No matter how one looked at it, this was not a fair fight. "I'm fine with it." Ding Yu agreed immediately, and was somewhat excited. "Do you have a problem?" Commander Lu looked at Su Zimo and said indifferently, "If you refuse, hand over that item and return it to Ding Yu right now. There's only one more update today. Everyone sleep early." End of chapter. Chapter 1837. Are you going to do it personally? Su Zimo turned to look at Ding Yu, who was not far away. Ding Yu raised his head slightly and declared proudly, "Of course. I'll take back what belongs to me personally and give it to Shaoli." Su Zimo nodded without hesitation. "Sure." Yu Hao and the others remained silent. They had witnessed Su Zimo's methods with their own eyes. Even in a head-on fight, Ding Yu might not be a match for Su Zimo. Ding Yu was extremely confident and did not take Su Zimo seriously. In his opinion, the reason why Su Zimo agreed so readily was because Su Zimo did not have a second choice under the pressure of Commander Lu. Commander Lu nodded slightly, feeling very satisfied. In his eyes, be it Ding Yu or Su Zimo, they were merely servants. However, Ding Yu was a tactful servant. Cultivation was boring, especially on a remote Dragon Abyss star like Azure Cloud County. Even though they were the guards of the great Gene Immortal Kingdom, they did not have much entertainment. Being able to watch these servants fight with their lives on the line was one of the few pleasures they had. That green-robed cultivator looks familiar. Suddenly, a voice sounded from the crowd. Immediately after, another person said, "That seems to be the person the wolf army is after. His name is Su Zimo. Indeed, he does look similar. That's him." A series of discussions broke out in the crowd. At that moment, countless gazes landed on Su Zimo. There was passion, enmity, greed, killing intent, and sympathy. Any mystic immortal would be tempted by a bounty of 100,000 essence formation elixirs. More and more cultivators gathered. Under the gazes of so many people, Yu Hao and the others who stood beside Su Zimo felt waves of pressure and were flustered. It was hard to imagine what kind of pressure Su Zimo, who was at the heart of the storm, would have to endure. The few of them subconsciously looked at Su Zimo, and they were all shocked. Under such circumstances, Su Zimo's expression was still calm, and he seemed to be unable to sense the hostile gazes of everyone. He was calm and composed. This person's temperament and courage are truly rare. In the crowd, a yellow-robed woman nodded slightly and said softly. There were more than 10 cultivators surrounding the yellow-robed woman, vaguely protecting her. A tall and sturdy middle-aged man stood behind the yellow-robed woman. He looked very powerful, and his eyes were bright and full of expression. "Mrs. Wright, this person is somewhat unusual," the middle-aged man said in a low voice. Not far from the yellow-robed woman, there was a group of people. The person in the middle was also a beautiful woman. She seemed to have a prominent position and was surrounded by people. She wore a light blue long dress that reached the ground, and there was a faint electric light flickering in her eyes. The blue-robed woman seemed to have heard what the yellow-robed woman said, and she suddenly smiled. Big Sister Su is right. Unfortunately, this person's cultivation is slightly low. Now that he's offended Ding Yu and is being pursued by the wolf army, he's truly not worth befriending. The yellow-robed woman smiled and did not argue, and she asked instead, "Little Sister Yuan, you're here for that thing as well?" "Of course." The blue-robed woman smiled. "Isn't the reason why the 8 great powers are gathered in Dragon Lake City at this time?" The yellow-robed woman said, "That's not entirely the case. According to my knowledge, the people from Zhuangguo aren't here. Big Sister Su, I'll see you at Dark Knight Workshop. I hope you'll show mercy at that time." The blue-robed woman spoke before turning and leaving. The conversation between the two of them was impossible to distinguish amidst the clamorous and chaotic crowd. However, Su Zimo possessed Qinglian's true body, and his hearing was terrifying. So he clearly captured the conversation between the two of them amidst the clamorous crowd. Even though their conversation was short, it revealed quite a bit of information. This time round, it seemed like a treasure had appeared and was going to be auctioned at Dark Knight Workshop. That was the reason why the 8 great powers of Dragon Lake Planet were gathered here. By the looks of it, the 8 great powers valued that treasure extremely highly. The people sent over were all influential figures of the various great powers as well. For example, Ding Yu, Jiang Li and Chen Xinyang, who had an arm severed by Su Zimo, were all young masters and daughters of the various great powers. "So it's you." When Ding Yu heard the discussions around him, he could not help but laugh loudly. "Seems like the bounty of 100,000 essence condensation elixirs belongs to me. Ha 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 ha." In Ding Yu's opinion, Su Zimo was already a dead man. "You'd better not leave the city." Ding Yu looked at Su Zimo with a smile. "There are countless pairs of eyes staring at you right now. The moment you make a move, I guarantee that you'll be torn into pieces by many cultivators. You'll only have a chance of survival if you fight with me at Dark Knight Workshop." After saying that, Ding Yu laughed loudly and left smugly. As he said, he was not worried about Su Zimo leaving Dragon Lake City. Now that Su Zimo's identity was exposed, There were countless people who wanted to make a move on Su Zimo for the bounty of 100,000 essence condensation elixirs from the vicious wolf army. Everyone could not make a move in Dragon Lake City. However, once they left Dragon Lake City, they could kill as they wished even at the city gates. Following Ding Yu's departure, the crowd gradually dispersed as well. However, in reality, there were still many cultivators loitering nearby, watching Su Zimo's movements. Yu Hao and the others had grim expressions. The current situation was extremely disadvantageous for them. Even if they could survive the calamity at Dark Knight Workshop, they would most likely be hunted down by many cultivators the moment they left Dragon Lake City. Fellow Taoist Su. Right then, a soft call sounded from behind Su Zimo. Su Zimo turned around. A group of cultivators walked over from not far away. The person in the lead wore yellow robes and had a faint smile on his face as he cupped his fists towards Su Zimo from afar. Yu Hao glanced at the patterns on the sleeves of the group of cultivators, and his gaze narrowed as he said in a low voice, "These are people from Twin Dragon Sect." Twin Dragon Sect, one of the 8 major factions. Twin Dragon Sect was founded by 2 grade 8 mystic immortals. It was said that the 2 of them were sworn brothers with dragon blood flowing in their bodies, and were extremely strong. For example, the various top factions on Dragon Lake Planet would usually have unique symbols on their uniforms and badges. There was a divine dragon embroidered on each of the sleeves of Twin Dragon Sect. What's going on? Why are all the major factions on Dragon Lake Planet here in the city at this time? Shenfei muttered softly. The yellow-robed woman approached with a smile. I'm Su Wan from Twin Dragon Sect. Gu Wenjun sent a voice transmission with her spirit consciousness. I heard that one of the sect masters of Twin Dragon Sect has the surname Su. I'm Su Zimo. Su Zimo cupped his fists and returned the greeting with a questioning gaze. Su Wan smiled gently and asked, Fellow Taoist Su, are you confident about tonight's battle? It's all right. Su Zimo replied ambiguously. Su Wan sent a voice transmission. If you trust me, I can secretly send you out of the city to avoid this battle. Su Zimo looked at Su Wan deeply. Su Wan's gaze was sincere and did not avoid it at all. This surprised Su Zimo. Given the current situation, there were countless people who wanted to take his life in exchange for the high bounty of the Wolf Army. To think that there would be someone willing to step forward and help him. 2K Reading Network. Chapter 1838. Thank you for your kind intentions, Su Zimo declined tactfully. However, I still want to check out Tenebrous Night House. When Su Wan saw Su Zimo's rejection, she did not mention the matter anymore, and went with the flow. From what I know, apart from Zuyengu, many cultivators from the 8 major factions of Dragon Abyss Planet are here to participate in Tenebrous Night House. Do you know why, fellow Taoist Su? I don't know. Su Zimo shook his head. Please enlighten me, fellow Taoist. Su Wan said, There's a treasure being auctioned at Tenebrous Night House this time round. It's a leaf from the Suwa tree. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The Suwa tree was one of the 3 sacred trees of the Buddhist monasteries. Legend has it that the Buddha was once born under the Ashoka tree, and comprehended the Tao under the Bodhi tree. Eventually, he attained nirvana and transcended under the Suwa tree. Every single one of these 3 holy trees possessed unimaginable power. In Tianhuang mainland, a single withered Ashoka flower contained the power of life, allowing Su Zimo to reconstruct Jin Dan. Of course, in a small world like Tianhuang mainland, there was no way he could come into contact with the 3 sacred trees. In Tianhuang mainland, a single Ashoka flower was already an utmost treasure of the Buddhist monasteries. To think that he would obtain traces of another sacred tree of the Buddhist monasteries, the Suwa tree, the moment he ascended to the upper world, and on the remote Dragon Abyss planet. Even though it was just a leaf, there was definitely a great amount of power contained within this leaf. More importantly, the Buddha had once attained nirvana under the Suwa tree. If he could obtain that leaf, would it provide him with unexpected help in comprehending the perfection of Nirvana Sutra as well? The Suwa tree is one of the 3 sacred trees of the Buddhist monasteries. When Su Wan saw that Su Zimo was silent, She thought that he had not heard of the suwa tree, and explained the background of the tree briefly. After pausing for a moment, she continued, "If you can obtain the leaf of the suwa tree, you'll be able to gather heaven and earth essence chi, and make the surrounding essence chi richer. With that, be it the growth of immortal herbs or cultivation speed, there will be an increase." "Oh." Su Zimo raised his eyebrows. Su Wan said, "Vitality-nurturing grass and rain flower take 100 years to mature. It is said that with the help of this leaf, the maturation period of these two immortal herbs can be shortened by 10 years. "Amazing!" Su Zimo exclaimed in admiration. Duan Tianliang, Big Yellow, and Ning Zhao all had strange looks on their faces. Among the people present, only the three of them knew about Su Zimo's background. According to Su Wan, the two immortal herbs would mature in 90 years after obtaining the leaves of the Sua Luo tree. And the immortal herbs around Su Zimo would mature in a year. Just by shortening the time by 10 years, it would attract the people from the 8 major forces of Dragon Abyss planet to gather here. If news of Su Zimo's ability were to spread out, it would probably alarm the earthly immortals and heaven immortals. Of course, even if the Sua Luo leaf could not help him in accelerating the growth of the herbs, he still wanted to get his hands on it. The leaf had a very special meaning to his cultivation. However, from the looks of it, there were at least 7 major forces fighting for this leaf. When the time came, it would be very difficult to obtain it. "Fellow Taoist Su, have you joined any forces? If not, why don't you join the Twin Dragons sect?" Su Wan invited. "If you're willing to join our sect, the Twin Dragons sect will definitely lend a hand in this crisis and try our best to resolve it for you. Thank you for your kind offer." Su Zimo brought his fists together and said, "Let me think about it." Su Wan did not force him. She said, "If you've made up your mind, you can look for me at any time." The two of them exchanged a few more words before bidding farewell to each other. "Miss, although this person is brave, he's only a rank 5 mystic immortal and has a bad relationship with the evil wolf army. Why did you take the initiative to recruit him?" After Su Zimo left, the middle-aged man behind Su Wan asked with a frown. "I don't know either." Su Wan said thoughtfully, "I just feel that this person is a little special." Actually, Su Wan had inherited her father's bloodline and had a stream of dragon blood flowing in her body. And Su Zimo had the dragon phoenix primordial spirit. Even a true divine dragon would have to bow before the dragon phoenix, let alone the fact that Su Wan only had a stream of dragon blood in her body. Therefore, the moment Su Wan saw Su Zimo, she had a special feeling. Under Yu Hao's lead, Su Zimo arrived at a mansion in Dragon Lake City and handed over more than 3 million immortal herbs in exchange for more than 300,000 essence condensation elixirs. Including the essence condensation elixirs he obtained from the Zuyango army, he already had close to 500,000 essence condensation elixirs in his storage bag. These essence condensation elixirs were enough for him to cultivate for a long time. "Fellow Taoist Su, if you can obtain the protection of the Twin Dragons sect, you might truly have a chance to resolve this calamity." Yu Hao analyzed. Yu Hao and the others were not worried about the battle between Su Zimo and Ding Yu. In their opinion, even if Su Zimo was defeated, he would be able to preserve his life with the methods he had revealed earlier. The true danger was the pursuit of other cultivators after leaving Dragon Lake City. At that moment, they did not know that the wolf army had already received the news and was sending an army over. A protector of Zuyangu was about to arrive at Dragon Lake City as well. Although Dragon Lake City seemed calm, there were already undercurrents surging. The subsequent developments of today's incident had completely exceeded everyone's expectations. After exchanging for the essence condensation elixirs, Su Zimo found a random place to rest and conserve his energy while waiting for night to arrive. In his boredom, Su Zimo took out the tortoiseshell from his storage bag and examined it carefully. Others might not be able to tell the uniqueness of the tortoiseshell, but Su Zimo had once cultivated the black tortoise phenomenon and possessed the innate divine power of the spirit tortoise shield. Instantly, he discovered that the patterns on the tortoiseshell were strange. Su Zimo stared at the patterns on the tortoiseshell for a long time and did not notice it even when night fell. It was only when Yu Hao nudged Su Zimo from the side that he woke up. Fellow Taoist Su, Tenebrous Night Workshop is already open. Yu Hao reminded. Shen Fei could not hold back his curiosity and asked, "What's so special about this tortoiseshell that you're so engrossed in it?" Su Zimo smiled and did not hide anything. The patterns on the tortoiseshell were actually carved by later generations, and there's a type of formation diagram recorded on it. The formation diagram recorded on the tortoiseshell was far from the formations of the lower realm, and was extremely profound and mysterious. Even with Su Zimo's attainments in formations, it was quite difficult for him to understand it. That was the reason why he was so engrossed in it, that he forgot about the passage of time. Let's go to Tenebrous Night Workshop. Su Zimo put away the tortoiseshell, and stood up with a look of joy in his eyes. The value of this tortoiseshell was probably more than 20 million, let alone 20,000 essence condensation elixirs. Everyone followed the crowd, and before long, they arrived at an extremely ordinary-looking residence. However, after entering the residence, they saw a gigantic underground entrance. Everyone walked down the stairs, and after walking for a while, they heard a series of sounds. After turning a corner, the path ahead opened up, and a gigantic extravagant palace stood not far away. It was brightly lit, and filled with people. End of chapter. Chapter 1839. There were many guards around the palace, and none of them had low cultivation realms. If anyone dared to cause trouble here, the guards would attack immediately. Su Zimo and the others paused for a moment, before heading towards the entrance of the underground palace. Previously, Yu Hao and the others had only heard of Tenebrous Night Workshop. This was the first time they were here, and they looked around curiously. The palace was bustling with activity. Although the palace was built underground, it was spacious and could accommodate at least tens of thousands of people. In the middle of the palace was a gigantic platform. At the top of the palace, there was an area for people to rest. There were all sorts of spirit fruits and immortal peaches that emitted a fragrance. Those seats were above the many cultivators below, and had the best view. Only those with noble statuses could sit there. Many cultivators were already seated on those seats, and they were chatting with one another. Su Zimo could clearly see that there were even a few grade 8 mystic immortals among those cultivators. Yu Hao whispered, "Those who can sit there are usually exalted immortals of Dragon Lake City, who are influential in the city. The 8 major factions are nothing in the eyes of those exalted immortals. Look at the young masters of those factions. They can only stand below." The surroundings of the platform were filled with people as well. Su Zimo swept his gaze. Before long, he caught sight of some familiar faces in the crowd below. Ding Yu of Mystic Yin Mountain and Zhongli of Heaven Fire Hall each occupied an area. The two of them stood at the front with many cultivators guarding behind them. At the same time, Ding Yu caught sight of Su Zimo as well. Ding Yu sneered at Su Zimo and placed his palm below his neck, making a beheading gesture in a provocative manner. Su Zimo retracted his gaze and ignored him. Another group of people stood in the area beside Ding Yu. The leader was a young man with a ferocious appearance. He was the young master of Heaven Fiend Sect, one of the 8 major factions. Brother Ding, to think that this lad would dare to accept the challenge. The methods of the young master of Heaven Fiend Sect. Ding Yu smiled. He doesn't have a choice. Commander Lu personally gave the order. If he dares to disobey, then he's courting death. The Heaven Fiend Sect's young sect master held a huge pork shoulder in his hand, and ate until his mouth was covered in oil. He grinned and said, "Then this brother will wish you victory." Almost as soon as Su Zimo entered the palace, many people on the high platform looked over. Other than Zuyingu, the Sky Scorpion Stockade, Thunder Shaking Hall, Twin Dragon Cult, Heaven Fiend Sect, Profound Yin Mountain, Heaven Fire Hall, and Profound Light Sect were all present. Fellow Taoists Su this way. At this moment, a soft cry came from the crowd. Not far away, the Twin Dragon Sect's Su Wanning waved at Su Zimo. Although the people from the major forces were also standing below, they were all close to the high platform. They each occupied an area, and had a good view. Su Zimo hesitated for a moment before walking over. Ding Yu and the others sneered when they saw this. A hint of surprise flashed through the eyes of the blue-dress woman from Thunder Shaking Hall as well. In the eyes of everyone, Su Zimo was already a dead man. Nobody expected that the Twin Dragon cult would choose to befriend Su Zimo at this moment. At this moment, everyone was gathered in the hall. However, the auction of Dark Knight House had yet to begin. Before long, a group of people walked in slowly from the entrance of the palace. The person in the lead was Commander Lu from before. At this moment, Commander Lu had already changed out of his armor and put on an ordinary brocade robe as he walked towards the high platform. "Brother Lu, you're late. Everyone was waiting for you." On the seat, a square-faced burly man greeted Commander Lu. Su Wanning whispered, "This is the other commander of Dragon Lake City. His name is Yanfei, and his status is similar to Commander Lu." Yanfei said, "Brother Lu, I heard that you even arranged a battle today?" Commander Lu smiled faintly. "It's just a casual game. Brother Yan, do you want to bet with me?" "Oh, what are we betting on?" Yanfei asked. Commander Lu said, "Let's bet on your rainbow light sword art. If I win, how about you lend it to me to take a look?" "Haha." Yanfei laughed out loud and said, "You've been coveting my sword technique for quite some time now. You've really got a good plan. I heard that there's a difference of an entire cultivation realm between the two of them today." Commander Lu said, "We can change the bet and bet that Ding Yu can kill that person in a few rounds." "That's interesting." Yanfei rubbed his chin in deep thought. Both of them were in high positions and did not conceal their conversation. Although Su Zimo and the others were in the crowd, they heard their conversation clearly. Su Wanning smiled bitterly and sent a voice transmission secretly. "Fellow Taoist Su, in their eyes, people like us who ascended from the lower worlds are just toys. These exalted immortals will often arrange such battles and set up bets. This is also one of their pleasures." Su Zimo was silent. To be precise, exalted immortals like Commander Lu did not treat them as humans at all. "Everyone please be silent." At this moment, a pleasant voice came from the high platform. Unknowingly, a woman had already arrived on the high platform. She wore a thin veil that revealed her alluring figure, and her red lips were alluring. She was extremely charming and seductive. Shun Fei's gaze was fixated, and he could not help but swallow his saliva. "Exalted immortals, you've all taken your seats. Today's auction will officially begin." The veiled woman smiled gently. Su Wan whispered, "Usually, the battles between cultivators will only begin after the auction ends." Su Zimo nodded. On the high platform, the veiled woman waved gently. Not far away, a young girl walked over and ascended the high platform with light steps. She held a tray with both hands that was covered by a black cloth, and no one knew what was inside. The first item for auction is a cultivation technique, the Heavenly Thunder Dragon Tiger Sutra, superior grade yellow grade. The veiled woman lifted the black cloth and revealed an ancient book inside. There were 4 grades of cultivation techniques, Heaven, Earth, Mystic, and Yellow. Each grade was further divided into superior grade and inferior grade. Right now, most of the cultivation techniques cultivated by cultivators on Dragon Abyss Planet were unorthodox and could not even be considered as inferior grade cultivation techniques. The moment the Heavenly Thunder Dragon Tiger Sutra appeared, it attracted the attention of many cultivators. The blue-dress woman from Thunderquake Hall was invigorated as she glared at the ancient tree with a burning gaze. The starting price of this cultivation technique is 500,000 essence formation pills. The veiled woman said slowly, "Good lad, the starting price is 500,000 essence formation pills." Duan Tianliang shuddered and nearly bit his tongue. Su Zimo frowned slightly as well. Even the number of essence formation pills in his storage bag was less than 500,000. Of course, he was not interested in the ancient tree. Although he did not know the grade of the Perfection of Wisdom Nirvana Sutra, it was definitely above Earth grade, and could even be a Heaven grade cultivation technique. If not for that, it would not have been able to subdue Yin and Yang, and fuse the essence spirits of the Dragon Phoenix and Qinglian. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.